24, 15 and 24, no child labor in this country. So in the second hour of the show, I'll be talking just after 7 a.m. I'll be in conversation with Sibano Bandla of Youth Capital, and we'll unpack it all, just the cold face of unemployment, of the unemployment crisis in this country being young people, and the solutions seeking what's working, what's not working, by way of trying to push back and roll back the frontiers of youth unemployment. That conversation with Sibano Bandla coming up just after 7 a.m. At about 7:45, 7:45 this morning, onwards, from that point onwards, we have a fascinating mini debate that we have lined up for you. It was triggered by comments that were made by renowned economist David Roth in an interview with our sister station RSG, in which he called for the closure of most of the country's public universities. So Rod argues that government should instead redirect funding to private institutions, arguing that many state-owned universities are underperforming and are poorly managed. So basically the argument along the lines of, for what we put into the system, the return on investment is really not worth continuing to pump that much money into it. And so David Roth arguing that we would get more returns by investing more in supporting the private institutions. Well, his comments have not gone unnoticed, and after we hear from him at about 7:45, we'll immediately hear the counterpoint from writer and commentator Victor Khomiaswana, who is also the executive director for marketing at the University of Limpopo. So that's coming up from around 7:45 this morning. Your regular updates, the Morning Brief team at their stations again this morning and ready for takeoff. And Musa at the news desk, Rob Byrne on traffic, Zaikan at the sports desk, Melissa Buta with the Morning Brief in brief. Dauleng Lechela has your business and market news covered, and Sipho Mantula with your Africa update coming through at about 7 this morning. Your calls, please put them through to the number 086 000 2032, and please send me WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. On social media, we are at SAFM Radio on X. We are SAFM Radio on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, we are live on our YouTube channel, and that is SAFM Radio. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this morning briefing session started.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
As a business owner, I've noticed how being energy efficient has improved my savings and the growth of my business. You too can improve your margins by adopting energy efficient behaviors. Simply switch to energy saving lighting, switch off non-essential equipment, and maintain HVAC systems. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to see your business soar, as well as contribute to a greener planet. Just like every Rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Banyana Bus Style are confident nothing will stop their winning mentality, while Richmond United ladies are highly spirited to display a first-class performance. Gauteng is up against Northern Cape. This is the Hollywood Best Super League. Catch the delight of Mzansi's women's football, Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC versus Richmond United Ladies on Sunday 18 May at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC One and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the Morning Brief.
At 12 minutes after 6, here's Melissa Buta with the Morning Brief in brief for this morning. Good morning to you, Melissa. Let's start with what the JRA has been saying about the upgrades and repairs to that road, formerly Bree Street, now Lillian Ngoyi Street.
Morning, Thulasizwe. So the JRA has announced that the second phase of the Lillian Ngoyi Street rehabilitation program will commence in September 2025. This stage will refurbish 1.8 kilometers between Ntemi, Piliso and End streets. The first phase, covering 450 meters from Harrison to Cray Street, is on track and expected to be completed by August of 2025, despite previous delays which were caused by a terminated contract and a gas explosion that severely damaged infrastructure. They're saying that at least 43% of the project is complete, including 60% of a new service tunnel. The upgraded streets will feature improved road surfaces, sidewalks, vendor spaces, and bus stops. The JRA is using extended hours and safety measures to ensure that they stay on schedule in fixing this road.
Let's stay in Gauteng then. Tell me what Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier, has been saying about the effectiveness of the so-called Amapanyaza.
Yesterday, the Premier Panyaza Lesufi revealed that since their launch in 2023, Gauteng's crime prevention wardens, known as Amapanyaza, have arrested over 20,000 people, initiated by Panyaza Lesufi himself to combat rising crime. The program has faced criticism from opposition parties over training, quality, and cost. However, the Premier continues to defend the wardens, saying that they have had a major impact in the city, and the city has seen reduced crime and road fatalities, and affirmed ongoing efforts to enhance their training in collaboration with the National Police.
And in the Western Cape, we're watching a march by women farm workers. What's that about?
So women farm workers in the Western Cape are urging the Department of Employment and Labour to enforce labour laws on commercial farms. Protesting in Cape Town, they were protesting yesterday in Cape Town, accusing the department of ignoring violations of workers' rights. They were represented by the Women on Farms project, who demanded enforcement of laws like the National Minimum Wage Act, penalties for non-compliant farmers, and fast processing of UIF applications. They've also called for a meeting with key provisional labor officials by the 6th of June.
All right, thank you for that. That's Melissa Puta there with your morning brief in brief, just completing your picture with some of the stories that we may not necessarily have the time to cover within the 3 hours.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
6:15 on this Wednesday. Let's tell you how your weather will be this morning. We start with this. No impact-based warnings coming through from the South African Weather Service. So straight to your weather then. Pretoria will be fine with a minimum temperature of 10 and a maximum of 22. Johannesburg, fine, 8 to 21. Mbombela will be partly cloudy, 11 to 22. Polokwane, partly cloudy, 8 to 22. Mahikeng, fine, becoming partly cloudy, 2 to 21. Bloemfontein will be fine with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 21. Kimberley will be fine, 0 to 23. Uppington, fine, 1 to 24. Cape Town will be fine with a minimum of 14 and a maximum of 26. George will have morning fog patches, otherwise fine with a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 22. Gqeberha will be fine, 9 to 28. East London, fine, 13 to 27. Durban will be fine with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 26. Richards Bay will be fine with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 26. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will be fine with a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 27.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
South African tourism brings you one of the biggest must-visit events on the global calendar, Africa's Travel Indaba, happening from the 13th to the 15th of May at the Durban ICC. Catch Oliver Dixon live from the Africa's Travel Indaba with South African tourism this Wednesday for all the highlights, live updates and more. Take a glimpse of the future of African travel. Africa's Travel Indaba, brought to you by South African Tourism.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
And for that, we take you to the Philippines this morning as the dust settles on a noisy 2-month midterm election campaign in that country. A deeper and more dangerous political drama is unfolding. The once allied families of President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte have descended into a bitter and personal feud, one that could determine the country's political future. So let's speak to Professor David Munyai, who is the director for the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time once again. So this is a power struggle between two allies who together swept to a landslide victory in 2022, but have since fallen out in the build-up to the recent, legislative elections that were taking place. What do we know about what's at the heart of the fallout and how it's shaping Philippines' politics?
Oh, indeed. Thank you for having me. I think the two are divided over a number of issues. I think at the heart of it, it has to do with the vice president's father, Duterte himself, who has been locked at The Hague. And the current president, Marcos, played a critical role in assisting the arrest as well as sending him off from the country, which is seen as a betrayal for many Philippines who support Duterte. But at the same time, it's happening with a lot of changes happening at a global level. The economy is not doing well, and the president appears not to really stand in a way that appeals to a majority of people on the ground. And therefore, I think it is playing in hands of the vice president that is using these issues in her own bid for power, which is coming in 2028.
And from what I read, Prof, the honeymoon period didn't really last between these two former allies, Sara Duterte and President Marcos, especially with some of the inputs that were coming through from the former president, Rodrigo Duterte, criticizing quite sharply the current president. Tell me about the ambitions of Sara Duterte in all of this situation and her ambitions to become president.
Other than being the daughter of the former president, she has support of her own. And I think, like her father, she also read the situation in the country on core issues that had affected politics in Philippines. I think the issue of crime, which brought the former president to trouble and sent to The Hague, is one of it. But throughout the issue of crime, I mean, behind it is the issue of poverty, the deep poverty and division, with a few people who have benefited from the economy, and therefore she's seen as a party, and herself and her father, people who are trying to bring in the poor into the mainstream economy. Changes in the U.S. and tensions in the region also plays in the entire game, where the Duterte family is seen as much more pro-China, while Marcos, besides the history of the father, they've always been in power and are seen to trying to win over the United States as well as to stay pro-West in a way. So the country is divided into two, politically and otherwise.
And the recent senatorial race, we're told that the president's camp didn't perform as well as they should have or could have, or as expected of an incumbent president. This against a backdrop of Sara Duterte, the vice president, having been impeached and now awaiting that impeachment to serve before the Senate. What are the implications thereof in terms of Marcos's ability, the Marcos camp's ability to curb Sara Duterte's presidential ambitions?
Sara Duterte, on one hand, she claims that the current president is incompetent and betrays the country. I think in her rallies, I mean, she plays these videos of her father being arrested, whisked out of the country. So this is playing into the national psyche, while the president, on the other hand, claims that she wants to assassinate him. But the entire Senate plays also into a dynasty where very rich people who are in politics and they're also weighting and measuring the national temperature. But as it stands, it appears that Sarah has a small age, and therefore one doubts if she can be impeached, given the fact that they also require 2/3 majority according to the Constitution.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of the comments that Sarah Duterte has made about President Marcos, and I was thinking that if you were to say half of the things that are being said in that Philippines situation in South Africa, you would be in deep trouble with incitement, with issues of incitement to violence. Is that the political culture and the tone of the politics, at least in Philippines, if not in that region?
It's a cultural issue. I think you don't see that in Japan, nor China or any other part of the region within ASEAN. But in Philippines, it's very open. The politics is quite robust, to use our own language.
Yeah, because I mean, at some point, some of it was talking about, she was saying she's spoken to people to go and kill him and kill President Marcos, and basically saying that she dreams of doing, really ugly things to him. So in all of this, Prof, what do we say about the role of the Philippines in that region, its influence and basically its economic trajectory within that region?
Philippines stands alone within ASEAN. I think if you look at ASEAN, the bulk of ASEAN members are increasingly staying away from taking sides, either the China side or the U.S. side. And they're rallying around a stronger a region that requires no interference from big powers. However, Philippines has U.S. military bases, joint military drills with the United States, and at loggerheads with China, a critical country in terms of trade and the like. So if there's anything coming as an economic Cold War that we see appearing in all regions, including our own, Philippines is the forefront of that. And even chances of a war are more likely to spark there than any other region, in my view.
All right, Prof, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights as always. That's Professor David Munyai. He's the director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, let me quickly take a quick voice note from you this morning. It's about the unemployment situation in the country and how it affects the youth in particular. This person wanting to comment about unemployed graduates.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. I'm Bafana Kumalo in Memel. I propose, and I think it's important, that both the private sector and the public sector invest in the reskilling of all unemployed graduates. They need to be reskilled in the blue-collar jobs because there are no more opportunities, there are less opportunities on white-collar jobs. We need to reskill our young people who are graduates so that they can have better opportunities. And that the construction sector must be prevented from employing undocumented foreign nationals and focus on skilling our youth so that they find jobs in the construction sector and also in the agricultural sector. Thank you.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. Let's kick things off with soccer action.
Sorry, Zai.
I was looking at you like,
yeah,
hey,
what's happening, dude? Why are you dropping the ball? You gave me a through pass and I didn't play it.
Yeah, you see.
Tell me about Orlando Pirates and their send-off for the outgoing coach now. Is it former coach already, Rivero?
Yeah, Rivero's heading out. Is he going to Al Ahly? He didn't confirm anything. And he was saying he's had humble beginnings, and this is a big celebration for the team because they've done really well. Last night, Jose Rivero signed off, ending his reign with a 3-0 win over Golden Arrows, while the Spanish mentor didn't confirm his reported move elsewhere. He did reflect on his climb from the very bottom of football ranks, a journey he says came without shortcuts. The 47-year-old leaves Pirates having won an impressive 5 domestic trophies during his 3 seasons with the club. He said it was due to hard work, not favours.
That process, humble you and teach you how difficult it is to achieve things in life when you start from the bottom. So if you are thankful, if you appreciate all of those things, then you can manage to be the way I am, the personality that I have, and if I have do a relation about my personality and football, not my personality and my personal life, I think is related with that. The fact that I'm coming from the very bottom, and I'm here because I'm working for it. I'm not here because I got the lottery.
Orlando Pirates coach, ex-coach Jose Rivero. Let's go to Liverpool striker Darwin Núñez has been ordered to serve the remainder of a ban for his involvement in an altercation with fans while playing for Uruguay. The sanction was confirmed as an appeal against the ban was rejected by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, still with matters of soccer, Man United have decided not to hold an end-of-year Players Award night for the second season running. United cancelled their plans 12 months ago as the senior men's team finished 8th in the Premier League, even though they won the FA Cup. Although the men's sides are heading for their worst league finish since 1973-1974, they could still qualify for the Champions League by winning the Europa League. Tennis Lorenzo Musetti reached the quarterfinals of the Italian Open after heavy rain forced him to wait nearly 3 hours at match point before he could finish off his straight sets victory over Daniel Medvedev 7-5, 6-4. And finally, South African sprint legend Wade van Niekerk is back on track. The 400-meter world record holder is targeting a comeback in the 200 meters this season, aiming to qualify for the World Championships in Tokyo after years of battling injury, setbacks and a disappointing Olympic outing in Paris. Van Niekerk has returned to Bloemfontein and reunited with his stepfather, coach Steven Swartz. Now 32, he's focusing on rebuilding his speed, endurance and chasing a sub-20-second mark. We'll be back around, not sub-20, but more sport, top of the hour. I'm Sai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the trial within a trial in the asbestos roof removal case will resume in the High Court in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The matter was postponed on Thursday last week after a state witness fell ill. Minister in the Presidency, Kumbutso Ntshabeni, says police are continuing to investigate a charge of treason against Afrikaner advocacy groups. The investigation is related to the group's provision of false information to the U.S. government about the alleged persecution of Afrikaners. And a big Israeli airstrike on a hospital compound in southern Gaza has killed a large number of people. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency says at least 28 people have died. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We start with the forecast of very heavy delays coming off the N1 through Midrand towards Joburg this morning. A crash inside the Baklu interchange, so it's N1 onto the M1. I understand that may be fatal, so it may take a while to clear, but the traffic's already heavy across all lanes, back through towards Allendale and pushing back towards New Road very quickly. The N1 leaving Soweto is heavy. There's a crash there up by the Albertina Sisulu exit. The N3 queuing up passing Edenvale towards an earlier crash at Modderfontein Road. And the Mike 1's pretty heavy this morning, queuing from Ormonde yesterday, up through towards sort of Smith Street territory. Over in KZN, there's a crash involving a truck. It's on the M7 going towards the Bluff. If you're leaving Pinetown, that crash between North Dean and Belleville Road. So just as you come into Queens, there's quite a backlog of traffic on that M7 heading either towards the M2 or trying to get through towards the Bluff. And Cape Town, heavy pressure loading out of Tableview, Gee Road, Wood Drive, West Coast Road, Belowberg Road. Traffic all over those routes, particularly south coming from the Sandown Road, making your way through Tableview. That's because of the ongoing closure of Malabongwe out at Dunoon. The other big problem in Cape Town is a stationary vehicle, N2 inbound at Mowbray Main Road. That's a queue from the airport. And behind that, the M5 is already backlogging from sort of Ottery territory just to try and get off the M5 and into that mess that is the N2. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela with the first update of the morning. So Ndauling, we start in the United States. Tell me about the inflation figures for April there.
Morning, Tula. So U.S. consumer inflation cooled slightly in April, with prices rising at 2.3% year on year, down from 2.4% in March. This marks the smallest 12-month increase since February 2021. Now, the CPI increased 0.2% on a seasonally adjusted basis in April, driven by a 0.3% rise in shelter costs, which accounted for more than half of the monthly rise. Energy prices slightly ticked up, increasing 0.7% due to surges in natural gas and electricity prices, despite a slight decline in petrol prices. Food prices, however, decreased 0.1% last month, with a 22.7% drop in eggs and other grocery items. Core inflation, excluding food and energy, was 2.8% over the past 12 months, with a 0.2% monthly increase. Analysts, in the meantime, still remain wary, warning that prices might spike in coming months due to President Trump's tariffs, potentially pushing the annual CPI reading above 3%.
Yeah, it's been quite fascinating watching it all from across the ocean, right? I mean, when you hear them complaining about the price of eggs, for example, I kept hearing that's one item in the food basket that really shot up over the last few months. Tell me about Microsoft and the plans to slash 6,000 jobs. That's quite a big number.
That's right, Tula. So 6,000 jobs are on the line at the tech giant, and this accounts for about 3% of its global workforce of 228,000 employees. The layoffs are part of an effort to streamline Microsoft's structure, including reducing layers of management. According to the company, one of the objectives is to create a more agile and efficient organization. This move is likely Microsoft's largest round of job cuts since 2023, when the company cut 10,000 roles. Now, it's worth noting that these job cuts are not performance-based, unlike a smaller round of layoffs announced earlier in the year. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella has emphasized the importance of adapting to platform shifts and making adjustments to the company's sales execution strategy. Now, the company is also focusing on areas such as AI and cloud computing, where it has seen strong growth. Meanwhile, the announcement comes despite Microsoft reporting better than expected quarterly results earlier this month.
All right, Dowling, please give us a sense of where the markets landed yesterday and how we are starting this morning.
Now, the trade deal optimism is starting to fade to less. That's as markets trade mixed. U.S. stocks closed mostly in the green, with the exception of the Dow Jones losing over 0.6% overnight. Sentiment more positive back at home, with markets closing higher despite downbeat unemployment data. The all-share gained 0.5%, fueled by gains in the resources 10 complex, which closed 1.1% higher. Weakness, however, coming through on the currency front, with the rand trading above the 18.30 mark. It's at 18.32 to the greenback this hour. Lastly, in Asia, stocks mixed, with investors eyeing further trade deals between the U.S. and some of its other trading partners.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela with the first update of the morning. Look out for more from Ndauling, more insights from her just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
And for that, we turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. Let's start with the United Nations and what the General Secretary, Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been saying about peacekeeping missions around the world, particularly on the continent.
Refreshing morning, Tulas and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Tulas, there is a 2-day conference that is ending today in Berlin, in Germany. Now, the UN Secretary General lamenting Tulas in terms of what we know, Tulas, is membership fees in terms of contribution. We are having conflicts in the DRC, the conflict in Sudan, Central African Republic. Both Sudans, actually, Tulas, are heavily affected by the peacekeeping operation. And there is a UN peacekeeping fund that I still remember, Tulas. South Africa used to be a serious contributor on it through International Relations African Renaissance Fund. And it is important when we talk about peacekeeping operations, Tulas. Here we are talking about staggering 5.6 billion that by end of June, it is still lower in terms of member states. We are talking about 193 member states of the UN here who have to pay their share towards the peacekeeping operations in the world, Tulas. Even if I've mentioned African continent, we know Lebanon, Kosovo, Cyprus, other countries that have been affected. Haiti, Tulas, we still have that challenge in the African diaspora. But the SG came out very clear and reminding member states in that German 2-day conference about their contribution.
Yeah, saying that we are only as strong as our member states and those that contribute to peacekeeping missions around the world. Here's a country you and I don't talk about a lot. Guinea-Conakry, one of the, how many Guineas is it? 3 on the African continent. Tell
Absolutely,
tell me what's coming up. Guinea-Conakry decides 2025?
Tulas, we know that when you talk about this Equatorial Guinea, there's Guinea-Bissau. Now, Guinea-Conakry, General Mamadou has promised that there will be a referendum this year, Tulas, on the 21st of September. Elections slated towards the end of the year. Now, this was confirmed by the Prime Minister, Amadou Ouraba, who was at Abidjan at the CEO's forum, saying that Guinea will definitely go back to a constitutional order. Remember, this is one of the silent states that also went through a military coup. Now, Guinea is promising to do the same like Gabon.
Let's talk about Angola and their readiness to assist Namibia. Namibia is looking to get in and get quite stuck in as far as oil and gas is concerned. And Angola says they are ready to assist?
Integration.
Oh, Sipho, the line is letting us down a little bit there. Please move around. No, that line is not good enough. Sipho, we'll see if we can get you back on a better line. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update. The line seems to be breaking a little bit. Let's see if we can get Sipho on a better line.
Being kind to each other is Ubudu.
It's always time to play on Takalani Sesame.
Chetu, do you want to play Market Day now?
Doing things together as a community can be even more fun than doing them on our own.
Mama loves it so much when we can just be ourselves and learn about our culture together.
Tune in to see what makes you special for the all-new episodes of Takalani Sesame. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on SABC2.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
You are listening to The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, let's tell you this story now. Quite a few commentators have questioned why we as South Africans are not simply ignoring the group of 49 Afrikaners who departed on Sunday, relocating to the United States under false claims that they are refugees from this country. After all, the argument goes, these are just 49 people out of a population of what? Some 63 to 65 million, and cannot even be said to represent the critical mass of the Afrikaner population of this country. So the counter-argument to that has been to call out what some commentators say that the departure of the 49 really reveals an abiding sense of white superiority, victimhood, and refusal to relinquish unearned apartheid privileges. My next guest, Kim Heller, is author of the book No White Lies and a well-known social justice activist, and she is among the proponents of that view. But before I talk to her, let's take a listen to what the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, told reporters about the claims of persecution that the group that arrived in the United States has been telling and relating upon their arrival in the U.S.
A fair number of these refugees were farmers who farmed this particular land for generations and now face the threat not only of expropriation but also of direct violence. We had a chance to speak to them about many of these folks have experience with threatening invasions of their homes, their farms, and a real lack of interest or success of the government in doing anything about this situation, as well, obviously, as several very vociferous South African politicians repeating things like kill the Boer, kill the Afrikaner, and these people have been living under a shadow of violence and terror for some time now.
Yeah, so those were the comments from the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, just relating what they've been told by this group of 49. Remember, when they were leaving South Africa, reporters at OR Tambo International Airport tried without any luck to really get a comment from them, to just get their sense and state of mind as they leave the country. So let's speak to Kim Heller, who is a media and political strategist and also the author of No White Lies and a well-known social justice activist. Good morning to you, Kim, and thank you for your time. So there's this commentary that says it's just 49 people leaving the country out of a population, of some 65 million people. Why do we continue to talk about it? Do you agree with that, or do you believe that there's something deeper for us to talk about in light of this departure of this group?
Thank you. Good morning to you and your listeners. A pleasure to be on your program. I definitely believe this is a very important symbol of white supremacy and arrogance and lack of appreciation by Afrikaners. And we've seen since 1994, we've seen a lack of appreciation amongst white South Africans for the gift that they were given by Nelson Mandela on behalf of the black population, and that was one of friendship and reconciliation, despite the fact that we committed as white South Africans the most vile atrocities and acts of inhumanity against our so-called fellow black South Africans. And what we're seeing is a group of people who have used their white privilege to find themselves in a different country and create lies about their disadvantage, because every single white person in South Africa, whether they are extremely rich or poorer, hold privilege that was taken in apartheid and which has served us all very well in democratic South Africa. So I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to see many other South Africans take advantage of the foolish sentiment in the world and the propaganda of white supremacy, which allows us to be fast-tracked as refugees in countries such as America. And it's very shameful because we have people who are true refugees suffering in war-torn countries, and those people have been shut out of places such as America in favor of, guess what, white privileged South Africans.
But do you really believe that we will see a significant number of South Africans, white Afrikaner South Africans, taking up this designation of refugee? I mean, we are talking about 49 at this point, but the commentary has been that they're not representative of the critical mass of Afrikaners.
I think we're going to see a fair amount of people going. And even if they don't go, this is an act that's very symbolic because it expresses the arrogance as well as the detachment of Afrikaners, but I would say of all white people, from the social activity of just being South African and patriotic at the moment. You know, I'm busy writing a piece for a newspaper now where I speak about how we see scenes of Afrikaners, white South Africans waving a flag, a foreign flag, with a level of patriotic excitement and pride that they've never done for the South African flag. In fact, a lot of these people have held on to the apartheid flag. The same group of people who dare to tell black South Africans what struggle songs to sing. So I think it's a symbolic symbol of disgruntlement, even amongst the most entitled and privileged group of South Africans.
Yeah.
We have this absolute disrespect for the Constitution, for black government. I think they're running away from a black government because they think they are better and do not like to be told what to do by black government. They're going to the hive of white supremacy in the US. And I say good riddance to them, and may all races follow on from them so that we can rid this country of those who do not appreciate what the government has done. The fact that white South Africans are given such privileges in this country, despite not ever repenting for apartheid, to me is a great sign of the humanity of black South Africans, and once again a sign of the absolute absence of any moral compass amongst Afrikaners and white people in general.
Sure. So just on that point, Kim, is it a generalization on your part, or are you saying some Afrikaners, some white people in South Africa, or are you willing to go that far to say that's almost a default position?
I think it is a default position, and I think white people mustn't look upon these Afrikaners and say shame on you. I look upon those Afrikaners and say shame on all of us, because every single white person in this country is a child of privilege. We all benefit from the structural advantage we're given at the expense of black South Africans. It's time for us, and this should be a warning or an opportunity for us, if there are any decent white people in this country, to say shame on what has happened and take accountability and come to our senses, come to our moral senses and say it's time now to make reparations for what we've done.
So there have been, sorry Kim, there have been instances where I've been asked, and I think a number of other people have been asked to explain that when you say white privilege, what exactly are you talking about? And I think I would benefit more from having you, a white South African, explain it to us and explain it to those white South Africans who have asked that kind of a question.
Well, white privilege is a huge thing because it speaks to a benefit at every single level. The system, the structure, gives white people pride of place in everything. So our culture dominates. The fact that we are speaking no African languages and that white people don't bother is a symptom of white supremacy. The fact that the school syllabus is still wound around whiteness, white text, white learnings, white books is yet another symptom. So it's structural, it's systemic, and it also occurs in everyday life. When I will, for instance, be in a grocery shop and my parcel buzzes, but I'm allowed out because the black security guard won't approach me. But if it was a black woman, that would be so different. So it's a basket of unearned privilege.
Yeah.
But we must see it as a systemic thing. It's not an incidental occurrence.
Lastly, Kim, to someone listening, a white South African listening to this conversation and perhaps feeling, uncomfortable with it, but saying, I'm not one of those who's going to rush off and peddle lies of a white genocide, an Afrikaner genocide in this country, of mass expropriation, of mass deprivation of property and land in South Africa. But I still have my own grievances. Sure, I'm grateful for the way the transition was handled and the reconciliation project that, in which many black South Africans extended a hand of reconciliation. I'm grateful for how that happened and how it played out. But I'm not sure if I fit and identify with the agendas that have been described by Kim Heller this morning. What do you say? How do we constructively channel that energy that says that inculcates a culture of addressing grievances within the confines of what we've agreed to as our consensus in this country, without turning to, resorting to the benefit of the white privilege you just described, as well as the designations such as the ones that Donald Trump has engaged in?
I think what each and every white person has to do, whether they think they're privileged or not, is to face up to the historical injustices that they have done or their forefathers have done. And the question swings around two things. Firstly, the return of land, which has been stolen, and I've written extensively about that. And the second is the humility to speak African languages. Those two are the critical levers of power in a decolonized society. And white people are still acting as if this is their country. This has never been their country. And I think we have scholars like Steve Biko and others who remind black people that this is your country. This does not belong to whites. So to start off on an equal footing on what Mandela spoke about, a just and equitable South Africa, we have to deal with uncomfortable realities that land has to be returned. That is a starting point. Whether white people feel comfortable with that or not is not of consideration. When land was taken brutally from black people, there was no care or consideration about how those black people felt. This is the truth. If we don't do that, we will forever remain an unjust and immoral country, and white people will have missed yet another opportunity to be human.
All right.
And it's as simple as that.
Kim, thank you for your time this morning. That's Kim Heller. She's media and political strategist, as well as the author of No White Lies and a well-known social justice activist.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
You to avoid the N1 through Midrand. Coming out of Pretoria this morning, got the usual backlog of peak hour volleys, plus a collision, a fatal crash at Buccleuch, where the N1 moves through to become the Mike 1 down to Woodmead. That is causing a standstill across all lanes, all the way back to Brockfontein interchange in Centurion. So, looking at what I'm looking at, I would suggest if you come out of Pretoria, you look at routes like the N14 down to the R55, or the N14 down to the 511 at Diepsloot as alternative routes into certainly the northern suburbs. If you're looking at the R21 as the alternative, you've got the roadworks, and that'll probably be busier this morning as you hit the roadworks section down near the Benoni exit, with that extra traffic expected to avoid the N1. It is heavy. It's only going to get heavier. Stay away from it. Durban, truck crash on the M7 heading down towards the Bluff. That's between the North of Dean and North Park, North Dean, North Park, and the Belleville Road exits. That's very slow coming out of Pinetown. The rumble strips on the N3, again causing chaos both ways in and out of Durban. at the Pavilion Mall area. That'll also just get busier across the next couple of hours. A collision on the Higginson Highway coming out of Chatsworth at the N2. That's really badly backed up, leaving central Chatsworth today. And Cape Town, what you went through yesterday in Tableview, going through exactly the same this morning. The closure of the Sandown Road link at Malabongwe. So Malabongwe, the Sandown extension, closed between Rivergate and Potsdam Road due to that protesting at the noon. Routes like Gee Road, Wood Drive, West Coast Road, Bloberg Road, Coburg Road, Plattercliff Road, even Marine Drive coming off the Bloberg beachfront, all heavily backed up. And the stationary vehicle on the N2 inbound at Mowbray Main's been cleared, but it's left a big backlog of traffic. M2 from the airport, M5 to get in queues as far as Ottery Road. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
So you would have seen yesterday Eskom announcing the implementation of Stage 2 load shedding during evening peak hours from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. daily, starting yesterday until Thursday, the 15th of May. The utility cites ongoing challenges with generation capacity. Eskom says it's dealing with a combination of delayed maintenance returns and unexpected breakdowns as it navigates the demands of the winter season. Let's speak to Professor Vali Padayachi, a power and energy expert and a former executive manager at Eskom and a former senior executive at City Power in Johannesburg. Prof, good morning and thank you for your time. The load shedding coming now came against a backdrop against which we had been given the prognosis for winter and we're told to expect few, if any, days of load shedding. What does it tell us about the prospects for winter? Can we read anything into the implementation of Stage 2 for this week?
Good morning to us, to you and your listeners, and I'm glad to be back on the show. Yes, I think the quick response, I myself was surprised against the backdrop that you just described, that Eskom went into load shedding rather early, meaning in the middle of May. I was not surprised that Eskom went into load shedding because, as you've also said, Eskom did allude to in the winter plan briefing that they would get into load shedding, but as you've understood it, and my take on it is it would have been more the exception than the rule. So to get back to your question, the prognosis from this situation, because if we just analyze what they've said in the alert, just to keep it brief, they're reflecting about 16,000 to 17,000 megawatts of units that are either have come back from planned maintenance or forced outages and have broken down again. So the prognosis means that if this is happening in middle May, then it does not all go well if we get into the middle of winter, which is end of June, July, to last.
And Prof, how important is it that Eskom manages the maintenance program well going into winter? Because we know that they step it up in the months before the winter actually starts. But now in terms of those units coming back on stream, how important is it that that program is managed very well as we get into the peak of winter?
I'm glad you raised that point so early in the conversation, because I'm of the opinion, and just based on my experience having come from there, is that I think let's call it the root cause of these sudden breakdowns is that the units that are coming back from both planned maintenance and forced outages, the forced breakdowns, are probably breaking down again too soon and too often. Now, just bear in mind that it's not only Eskom people that are involved in the maintenance programs. I mean, there are many contractors and OEMs that are involved in the maintenance program. So I'm of the opinion that maybe that's where the problem lies, and there are probably contractor, and I'm just saying this with respect, there are contractor oversights that are slipping through, and so on.
All right, Prof, I've got to leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Professor Vali Padayachi, power and energy expert. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, asbestos trial within trial expected to resume, and women on farms demand decent salaries. Good morning. The trial within a trial in the asbestos roof removal case will resume in the High Court in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The matter was postponed on Thursday last week after a state witness fell ill. Judge Philip Lopsher was expected to deliver judgment on whether or not other defence lawyers can cross-examine the state witness, who's an investigating officer in the matter. The case relates to a 255 million rand tender. The trial within a trial follows the insistence of one of the accused, Murwadi Cholota, who is former Premier Ace Magashule's personal assistant, that her extradition from the US was unlawful. Palisa Machane reports.
Last week, Ace Magashule's legal representative, Lawrence Hodes, requested to cross-examine the state witness. Magashule was the Premier of the Free State at the time of the alleged illegal awarding of the multi-million rand tender. Moradi Cholota was the Premier's personal assistant. She was previously positioned to be a state witness, but according to the investigating officer, she became uncooperative in 2021 when she was interviewed by investigators in the USA. Hence the decision to have her arrested and extradited to South Africa to face criminal charges alongside Magashule and others.
Minister in the Presidency, Kumbutso Ntshabeni, says police are continuing to investigate a charge of treason against Afrikaner advocacy groups. The investigation is related to the group's provision of false information to the US government about the alleged persecution of Afrikaners. 49 Afrikaners have arrived in the US for resettlement. This as President Donald Trump accuses South Africa of committing genocide against the Afrikaners. South Africa has strongly denied the accusation. Ntshabeni was answering oral questions in the National Council of Provinces yesterday.
The law enforcement agencies are investigating the Treasonous Act of misinformation and also that which is provided for in the, I forgot the right naming of the act that talks about treason in the country. And unfortunately, I can't go into the detail of that because it will compromise then the work of the law enforcement agencies. But we continue to make sure that the Treasonous Acts cannot be left unpunished.
Police have arrested a 38-year-old man in Parklands, Cape Town for allegedly being in possession of foreign and South African currencies, totaling more than R1 million. Police spokesperson FC van Wyk says officers made the arrest after a tip-off on alleged drug dealing at a house in Tableview. The officers also found a bag with bank cards belonging to members of the public. The suspect, who's a foreign national, is facing a charge of possession of suspected stolen property and conspiracy to commit cybercrime. Members of a lobby group, Women on Farms, are demanding improved working and living conditions. They marched to the offices of the Western Cape Labour and Employment Department to hand over a memorandum yesterday. The women say exposure to chemicals, including pesticides, is compromising their health. They also say their salaries are below the minimum wage. The group's Julia Makangana read out the memorandum.
Engagements with Minister Muth to discuss issues pertaining to labour rights of farm workers. A meeting with the provisional deal, including Mr. Ntamo, the inspectorate heads of labour centres from Worcester, Didorans, Sierras, Paarl and Somerset West, and Dr. Bucks, the compensation fund, by 6 June. Launch immediate and full investigation into the cases listed above, including deploying qualified inspectors to conduct health and safety inspection on farms.
And finally, a big Israeli airstrike on a hospital compound in southern Gaza has killed a large number of people. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency says at least 28 people have died after 6 devices struck the European Gaza hospital in Khan Yunis almost simultaneously. The BBC's Hugo Bachega reports.
The apparent target of the massive attack was Mohammad Sinwar, who is believed to have become the leader of Hamas in Gaza after his brother Yahya was killed in an Israeli strike last October. Images posted online showed several huge plumes of thick black smoke. The strikes hit the hospital compound and the surrounding area and resulted in deep craters. A freelance journalist working for the BBC was injured and is receiving medical attention. The Israeli military described it as a precise attack on Hamas members.
Recapping the top story, the trial within a trial in the asbestos roof removal case will resume in the High Court in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The matter was postponed on Thursday last week after a state witness fell ill. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
You won't hear this in the news headlines, but it's definitely worth talking about. Lorette, a 61-year-old woman, is a real Outsurance client who switched and now saves a newsworthy 725 Rand a month on her 2024 BMW X1. That's 725 Rand more money in her pocket every month. Why pay more when you could pay less? Get a quote from Outsurance today and see how much they could save you on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer, Jose Rivero has left Orlando Pirates on a high, ending his time with a commanding 3-0 win, and that was over Golden Arrows. And we'll bring you cricket news, where we have the Proteas fast bowler Kagiso Rabada officially back in the mix. We'll find out more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
We're calling it Heavy Wednesday. If you're on the run from Pretoria down to Joburg, fatal crash at Buccleuch interchange. Bottom of the N1 onto the Mike 1. That's a major backlog all the way through the Brockfontein interchange. It's also having an impact on the N3 North coming up from Alex, trying to get through Buccleuch and turn onto the Mike 1 into Sandton. Major delays out that way. Crash at Maresburg, causing a big delay out of Soweto this morning as well. Durban's M7 into Pinetown up over St John's Avenue Bridge is heavy. Crash going the other way at Queensborough Bloody Way. That's a truck crash towards the Bluff. That's very slow. And Cape Town gridlocking day 2 through the Tableview area. Multiple routes under pressure. All of them, in fact, under pressure. Full of traffic because all that traffic that would divert Sandown Malabongwe towards the N7 to get out can't do it. Malabongwe's closed. It has to reroute through the central Tableview area. Give yourself plenty of time to get through. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
10 minutes after 7, it is absolutely great to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Let me tell you what's coming up in this hour. You remember when the announcements and the decisions were being taken by the Trump administration to pause, if not freeze altogether, the funding, the aid funding through programs such as PEPFAR and others, including to countries like South Africa. We were told that don't worry about it because as far as the HIV treatment program at least is concerned, government funds that mostly from our own resources from the fiscus. Well, we are hearing from at least one expert who works in the coalface of the fight against HIV and AIDS, Professor Francois Venter, that we have something to be concerned about, that we could be seeing the beginnings, of, an unraveling really of this world-renowned HIV/AIDS treatment and prevention program that we've built, that we've worked so hard to build over the last decade and a half. So Professor Francois Venter is my guest within the next few minutes here on the show. And then shortly after that, we focus on the numbers that have come through from the Statistician General, the unemployment figures, the Q1 quarterly labor force survey that shows really a jobs bloodbath. 291,000 jobs lost in the first quarter of 2025. Particularly pronounced is the crisis as it relates to the youth. And so we'll be speaking to Siba Nobandla from Youth Capital immediately after my conversation with Professor Francois Venter. And then a bit later on that mini debate that I promised you between David Roth, who believes that the state should be closing some of its public universities, basically saying that we're not getting bang for buck as far as our investment goes in higher education, and that the economy actually has some skills that it needs that are not necessarily offered at university level, and saying that a better return would be realized by investing in private institutions as well as channeling people to the technical colleges. There's a rebuttal, of course, that we've promised you by Victor Khomuyaswana, who will come through immediately after my conversation with David Roth, the economist. And that conversation is coming up at about 7:45 this morning. So that's how it's looking in this hour. But you are an integral part of the conversation. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. The second hour of the Wednesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Not all MBAs are created equal. At Henley Business School Africa, we deliver career growth and advancement that goes beyond borders. As South Africa's only global business school, our internationally accredited MBA connects you to 100,000 global alumni leaders. Ranked #1 in the world by The Economist for alumni network power, Henley is your gateway to a global career and the confidence to lead anywhere. Ready to make your mark? Visit henleysa.ac.za.
From city streets to dirt trails, introducing the new Isuzu MU-X. Sleek enough for the city, tough enough for the mountains. With advanced all-terrain drive, 360-degree camera, and upgraded suspension to take on any journey. The new Isuzu MU-X, now including the new Onyx XT. It's an SUV with 4x4 capabilities, ready for anything. Experience the new Isuzu MU-X at your nearest dealership today.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments, they make a difference.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So concerning questions are beginning to be asked about the country's continuing management of the HIV treatment program built over the past decade and a half, which has been credited with turning the tide on what was once one of the deadliest epidemics of our time. These questions come in the wake of the Trump administration's suspension of all foreign aid, including funding for the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, that is known as PEPFAR, despite government assurances when the aid freeze came into effect in February that the country's HIV/AIDS programs would cope just fine. At least one expert at the coalface of the HIV/AIDS response is warning that we risk unraveling the remarkable progress we had made over the past decade and a half on HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment programs. That expert is Professor Francois Venter, who joins me now. He is a clinician researcher at Wits University. He led a large PEPFAR program until 2024 and has had support and has had a support role since then. Prof, good morning and thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody.
So when this came in, when the freeze came in, including USAID and others, and the programs related to PEPFAR, we were told not to worry about the HIV/AIDS treatment, the biggest public healthcare treatment program in the world of its kind, because government funds a lot of that from its own resources. We were told that there would be coordination with the NGO and civil society sector as far as the other programs are concerned. But you are concerned a few months into it. Why are you concerned?
So it's almost 4 months in, and civil society and all these NGOs, there's been no evidence of coordination. There's been no evidence of picking up the work that was being done. We're talking about a highly efficient focus group of NGOs that was doing this work, and there's absolutely no evidence of picking up the pieces. This is 20 billion rands worth of programs that were being pumped into the country every year. There was lots of HIV testing, lots of key populations work, and clinics that were out there. These things were all shut down literally overnight. And the people that I talked to who were running these programs, there's no evidence of government engaging with them and replacing the programs. So despite these assurances, we haven't seen these services being replaced. And we're not talking about, government keeps telling us it's only it's only 17% of the budget. That 17% was a critical part of the program. So not replacing that 17% means the rest of the program is incredibly vulnerable to is highly dependent on that 17% working well to make the rest of it work well.
So in the piece that you wrote, Prof, you described the impact on the ground quite eloquently and quite clearly, and you spell out what really is a concerning situation. Tell me about the closure of some NGOs and what it's meant for such priorities as HIV testing, PrEP access, and community outreach programs.
So the first one is key population programs. So the specialist clinics for sex workers, for the LGBTI community, for intravenous drug users. These are groups of people who are very high risk for HIV, for both acquiring HIV, for transmitting HIV. They're quite specialist groups, and the clinics that the clinical services that you give to these groups of people are very specialist clinics. And as I said, one afternoon the staff were instructed you go home. Next morning, there were big signs on the clinic doors that said, we're closed, and those clinics all remain closed. Those clinics have not been reopened, since January, and those populations do not have access to those services. And government have said, oh, don't worry, you can just go to the clinic next door. We have not seen an increase in uptake of services next door, and that suggests that these populations have not gravitated to the clinics next door. And anecdotal, when you talk to these people who used to use those services, because we have access to those populations, they just say, look, those services are not geared to us, so we're just not going to go. So it does suggest already that there's going to be an increase in infections in the country simply because those services were shuttered. The second thing the NGOs did is they went into the communities and they went and tested people in the community. So again, we haven't seen those services replaced. So we don't have people going into places where there's higher HIV incidence and saying, I need to test you, and if you're positive, I'm going to shepherd you into the services, take you to the nurse, and start you on ARVs. Or if you're negative and high risk, I'm going to get you into a PrEP program. That's also falling apart. So people starting ARVs long before they get sick is one of the best things about the South African program. Now we're going to wait till you have TB, before you have meningitis, and then you're going to get started on ARVs. So all of that hasn't been replaced.
That outreach into communities was a big element of how government was going to respond, right? In coordination, they told us, with the NGO sector, for instance, around people who were on ARV programs and dependent on these, these aid programs, your PEPFARs, the programs related to USAID and others. That there would be that coordination to move people from those programs and basically ensure that they are plugged in the local community healthcare centers and the likes. So you are saying that there's no such plan, no coordination?
We haven't seen the movement that was promised. And with it as well, we've seen a drop in testing. For instance, we've seen a 20% reduction across the country in testing of infants who are born to women with HIV. Which again suggests an unraveling of the program around transmission to babies, which is one of the biggest benefits we've seen over the last 20 years. We've gone from 70,000 children born a year with HIV to about 2,000 or 3,000. So these are all fantastic things about the HIV program that the Department of Health rightly can feel proud about, but which is now going to start unraveling over the course of this year. And by next year, we're going to start seeing lots of new infections, lots of deaths, if they don't fix it quickly.
Sure. What a sobering prediction and diagnosis of the situation. I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Professor Francois Venter, who is a clinician researcher at Wits University. We'll be back with more for you in just a moment, including a focus on those numbers that have come through from Stats SA as far as unemployment is concerned.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
This year, our entire continent will gather. People from different places united by a common goal to discover, to connect, and to grow. The world will get to see our vision, the vast potential that lies within an unlimited Africa, with the objective of creating market access to our vast array of leisure tourism products. Join us from 12 to 15 May at the Durban ICC for this unforgettable experience. South Africa awaits. Come find your joy. Africa's Travel Indaba is proudly brought to you by South African Tourism.
Save and win a car with Spar, for real. Stand to win one of 50 fiery red Hyundai Grand i10 sedans. Buy any participating products and swipe your rewards card to enter. Get Cadbury Crunchy Lunch Bar or 5-star chocolate bars, any two for 22 Rand, plus 50 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Or 175 gram Protex soap, any two for 24 Rand, plus 50 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Price is valid until 19 May while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let's focus on this now. The country's unemployment crisis took a turn for the worse in the first quarter of this year, with the number of employed people decreasing by 291,000 in the first 3 months of the year. That's job losses. This represents a sharp reversal in comparison to the 132,000 jobs that were gained in the fourth quarter of 2024. Releasing its quarterly labor force survey, Stats SA has again highlighted that youth unemployment is ground zero for the jobs crisis, with over 10.3 million young people aged 15 to 24 unemployed in the first quarter of 2025. So let's speak to Siba Nobandla, who is content creator at Youth Capital. Good morning to you, Siba, and thank you for your time. These are concerning figures, and I think concerning is an understatement. Tell me what it reveals about the true extent of youth unemployment in the country.
I think the one thing it reveals is that, youth unemployment in South Africa is still one of the most urgent issues that we have. I mean, part of the stats that were released yesterday was a reflection of where we come from like 10 years ago, right, in 2015. And it shows that we've had almost a 10% steady increase over the last 10 years in terms of youth unemployment. That's putting us at nearly 1 in every 2 young people not being employed, right? And this trend confirms what we've been seeing, that our economy is simply not creating enough jobs for the number of people that are entering the labor force each and every year. Never mind that the number of people that are unemployed each and every year. So we're not just playing it as a game of, catch up, we are failing and we are falling further behind in terms of our goals of, reaching a society that is equal and a society where young people are employed.
Yeah. And the other figure that comes through from those statistics has to do with the young people who are not in employment, education or training. And the statistician general, Risenga Maluleka, was clearly startled by that number, saying that it has always been around 3.2 million, 3.3, and it started reaching 3.5 million. We are now sitting at 3.8 million, saying that he has never seen it that high. What does this say about efforts, other concerted efforts that you are reading that are aimed at addressing this particular aspect of the crisis?
Yeah, it is a crisis that the number of people that are not in employment, education or training continue to grow each and every year. I mean, right now, as you were saying, the numbers are reaching alarming numbers with 4 in 10 young people in South Africa aged 15 to 34 not in any of those things, education, employment or training. And it's showing that, one, we're not getting commitment from government to creating an environment and economy where young people in South Africa can participate in the economy, can also attain an education and employment. Each and every year, we often have students or young people struggling to find institutions to go and learn. Never mind the funding, never mind the state of our institutions alone. After that as well, when it comes to young people entering the field of work, there's often so many hurdles that a young person has to go through, and there's simply not enough jobs for the young people that each and every year enter into this, into the labor force, into education, etc. And so it's very important. The one thing that we need to remember that this highlights for us is that we don't have a government that prioritizes the needs of the people of this country.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. That's Siba Nobandla, who is content creator at Youth Capital.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Very good morning. Let's kick off with Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero officially signing off, ending his reign with a 3-0 win over Golden Arrows. While the Spanish mentor didn't confirm his reported move to Al Ahly, he did reflect on his climb from the very bottom of football ranks, a journey he says came without shortcuts. In 3 seasons, Rivero has clinched 5 domestic trophies, with the Buccaneers crediting hard work, not luck, for his success, hinting that his next chapter will also be about the hunger to win again.
I have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with a fantastic group of players, not only this season, the previous seasons as well, to share a lot of moments, quality moments with them, with the coaching staff as well. The opportunity to know about different realities, cultures, etc. It's something that enriches us as a persons, and I try to use it. I try to not just being here, do my job, get my salary, and that's it.
Looking at the Proteas fast bowler now, Kagiso Rabada, officially back in the mix after serving a 1-month suspension following a positive test for a cocaine metabolite earlier this year. The sample, which was taken after an SA20 match in January, despite criticism, national coach Shukri Conrad insists the sanction aligns with international doping protocols and says there was never a moment he considered leaving KG out of the World Test Championship final squad. Conrad saying that the focus now is on performance.
I don't think we need to be doing anything out of the extraordinary in order to beat Australia. We probably go in as underdogs, and rightly so. Not because of ability, but maybe just inexperience. And yeah, I'm very confident that when we play to our best, that we've got every chance of beating them. And like I've said before, we're not just happy to compete.
Cycling, the Dutch sprinter Casper van Uden outsmarted the favourites to win stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia, while Mats Pedersen held the overall lead, finishing 4th. Olaf Koy of Visma was in 2nd place, and Michael Zilliard of Tudor was 3rd for an overall Dutch podium. Tennis action, Carlos Alcaraz was made to work for a 6-3, 3-6, 7-5 victory over Karen Khachanov that earned him a spot in the Italian Open quarterfinals and a rematch with Jack Draper, who beat him earlier this year. More sport on the Morning Brief, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the trial of a man accused of arson in the fire at the Usindiso building in the Johannesburg CBD is expected to resume this morning in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, Ekurhuleni. Sitembiso Mhlalose faces 76 counts of murder. The trial within a trial in the asbestos roof removal case will resume in the High Court in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The matter was postponed on Thursday last week after a state witness fell ill. And Syrians have taken to the streets of the capital Damascus to celebrate US President Donald Trump's decision to lift economic sanctions on the country. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Calling it Heavy Wednesday. If you've got anything to do with Buccleuch Interchange, a fatal crash this morning. It's on the N1 South as you move through onto the Mike 1 South. So major delays coming out of Pretoria, backlogging heavily across all lanes on the highway, right through to Old Joburg Road. The secondary impact, of course, is the N3 North coming up from Alexandra Park. A lot of motorists come off the N3 at Buccleuch and join the Mike 1 for a turn down in towards Sandton. So the N3, possibly even worse than the N1. The N3 this morning backed up from the Elands interchange all the way in Germiston right through up to that N1 Buccleuch. So our call is for motorists to avoid those two highways, the N1 South into Buccleuch and the N3 North all the way through from Germiston to Buccleuch. Hit some local routes you'll get through a lot quicker this morning. Earlier crash on the M1 South at Rigel has now been cleared, but there is a backlog coming from Stormful. Durban having a really jam-packed morning. Of course, the rumble strips on the N3 backing things up. If you want to get off the N2 going south and turn to Pinetown or Pietermaritzburg, you literally sit these days from Inanda Road, down across Mgena Road, down through Spaghetti Junction, into the N3, over the rumble strips at Pavilion Mall before you're out of that. N3 inbound from Paradise Valley. M13, Hillcrest to the top of Fields Hill. Really busy in a truck crash at Queensborough, slowing traffic towards the Bluff. Cape Town, a Scholar transport vehicle involved. Kales River, Stellenbosch Arterial at Nooiensfontein. There's some very heavy backlogging going on there. And just a reminder, if you come out of or go into the Tableview area or go through it, major congestion alert, multiple routes under pressure with the ongoing closure of Malabongwe Drive at Dunoon. Give you an idea, just quickly, if you want to get into Tableview on Plattercliff Road, you're going to sit way beyond De Crendel Circle. That's kilometres away from the sort of flashpoint of Dunoon, but that's an indication of just how bad it is. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauling Lechela. Ndauling, in company news, tell me about Bytes and them delivering double-digit earnings.
That's right, Sila. So Bytes Technologies' strong relationships with international software vendors, including Microsoft, Adobe, and AWS, have been driving the company's growth. According to the CEO, Sam Mudd, these partnerships have allowed Bytes to capitalize on opportunities in cloud adoption, data migration, and cybersecurity. The company's reliance on Microsoft is significant, with sales generated from Microsoft products and associate services accounting for about 68% of Bytes' gross invoiced income and 50% of its gross profit. Bytes is also the largest reseller of Microsoft products in the UK and is targeting a market of 42,000 private sector companies. Now, zooming in on the annual numbers, Bytes delivered a 16.5% rise in earnings, and gross invoiced income exceeded £2 billion for the first time, driven by software sales. The group has even more runway to grow, saying it is well positioned to respond to evolving market demands, including cloud computing and increased demand for AI services. And so it expects another year of double-digit gross profit growth and high single-digit operating profit growth in FY 2026.
Tell me about Greencoat. Who are they and why? What do we know about them eyeing a listing on the JSE?
Greencoat is an interesting company to us, really taking advantage of growing demand for renewable energy. So they own renewable energy assets, including solar farms, wind farms, as well as battery storage assets. And they actually produce electricity and sell the electricity to the national to certain national grids within Europe as well as industrial companies. So they are seeking a secondary listing on the JSE's alternative exchange later this year, pending regulatory approval, of course. Now, the move aims to diversify its shareholder base, boost liquidity, and position the company for growth opportunities within the European continent. With a market capitalization of about 850 million euros, Green Coat Renewable owns and operates a number of renewable energy assets, 40 in particular, as mentioned. Wind, solar, and battery storage assets are part of those assets, and they operate in about 5 European markets, including Ireland, Sweden, Spain, France, and Germany. The expected listing will happen mid-June and will allow South African investors to tap into Europe's green energy boom, providing access to a business with ESG-aligned offshore assets. Now, the group says it has already received significant interest from South African institutional investors.
So how are we looking on the markets at this hour, Ndauling?
Starting in Asia, markets mixed as the rally we saw earlier this week pauses. That's as the China-US trade deal optimism starts fizzling out. With that, we are seeing the Japanese Nikkei down 0.32%, while the Hong Kong Hang Seng is up 1.6%. Over in the US, futures are in the green. Traders on that front digesting cooling inflation numbers, and that working for markets in the Wall Street. And then coming back home, stocks mostly in positive territory in yesterday's session. The all share closing 0.5% higher. The rand, however, on the back foot this morning. It is trading at 18.32 to the dollar.
Always right on the money. That's how Ndauling Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you just after 8:30 here on the morning brief. And during that update, Ndauling will give you a sense of the kind of day you can expect in the markets on this Wednesday.
He's short, loud, and definitely not a licensed therapist, but he's asking the hard questions. It's Heart to Heart with Kevin, the only talk show where the guests spill the tea and Kevin spills the jokes. Real talk, real laughs, and real short host. Heart to Heart with Kevin, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on S3.
With all the recent headlines, it's time for some good news. A 25-year-old man, Tyler, is smiling all the way to the bank. He switched to OUTsurance and now saves a whopping 718 Rand a month on the insurance for his 2021 Ford Figo 1.5. OUTsurance clients always get something out. You could too. Get a quote today and see how much they could save you on your car insurance. Make today the day you switch and save with OUTsurance. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
To this now, the renowned economist David Roth has stirred debate by calling for the closure of most of the country's public universities. Speaking on our sister station, RSG, Roth said the government should redirect funding to private institutions, arguing that many state-owned universities are underperforming and poorly managed. His comments have not gone unnoticed, and in a moment, I'll bring you the rebuttal from writer and commentator Victor Khomeyeswana, who is also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communications at the University of Limpopo. But for now, let's hear from David Roth. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. What ails the South African university system to the extent that you would make the comments that you've made?
Good morning to you. Well, that's not all that I've said about education in South Africa. Maybe just a broad comment.
Sure.
If you look at economic activities, how economies perform today, they are completely different from 100 years ago or 10 years ago or even last year. Because economies today are driven by skills mostly, and economies are driven today by technological advances. And we have to realize that. We have to prepare our population to participate in that part of the economy. Also, we're putting far too much emphasis in South Africa on education. We should be putting much more emphasis on skills. And we think that if you have a certain piece of paper in South Africa, you're going to have a job and you're going to be productive. That is not necessarily the case. For example, we produce hundreds of thousands of matriculants. They've got the qualification, but very little skills. Also, what I did say, and that is that we have to overhaul the whole education system. We have to start where it really matters, and this is by primary education. And primary education in South Africa is really something that I think where all the emphasis should be. Coming back to your question, yes. The reality is that there are more and more tertiary private sector institutions in South Africa that provide education. They are much nimbler, they're smaller, and I think they understand the markets much better, and they realize and understand what kind of skills are important. Those kind of institutions, unfortunately, do not provide the real university atmosphere, and that is also important, sports and culture and stuff like that, but they do provide certain skills, and they're getting better and better. Of course, there are some other downsides to private sector tertiary institutions as well. Like, for example, many of them, the quality is also not necessarily always there. But you look at the public sector universities in South Africa, our public sector universities many of them are very, very badly run. The biggest one in South Africa, UNISA, it has been in the news for so many times for the wrong reasons, unfortunately. And also, I've spoken to some professors, and in fact, I'm on my way to another conference this weekend. Sure. And most professors are in agreement that the quality of our universities, not all of them, of course, but the quality of our universities is just not up to scratch always. So, and that's my comment. We have to redo the whole thing. We have to put more emphasis on private sector tertiary education. We have to put more emphasis on technology kind of education, and maybe we have to relook at the whole school system as well.
So I hear what you're saying about a focus being on education as opposed to being on skills. Is the emphasis on education, particularly higher education, a university degree, not born out of the realities in our economy that in the order of things in terms of the likelihood of gaining employment in this high unemployment situation, your chances of getting employment are significantly increased when you have a university degree versus someone who does not have a university degree. Granted, the unemployment rate among graduates is also high, but comparatively speaking, there's a sense that your chances improve when you hold a university degree.
Without a doubt. I'm also an employer. We employ a lot of people, and certainly I would rather employ somebody with a BA degree in political science than somebody without that. Not because I think a BA degree in political science is so important. In fact, and let's be frank about these sort of things, and it goes for B degrees in economics as well. These kind of degrees are not really that attractive to employers anymore in the economy, but it certainly improves your chances of getting a job because it proves that you can at least read and write properly, and you know how to do research and the basic things that you need to be a good employee. You have that. But it doesn't really mean that I really need somebody with a BA degree in political science to employ such a person. And we have to be frank about these sort of things. But you're right. With a degree, you've got a much better chance of getting a job. But like you've just mentioned, the unemployment rate amongst people in South Africa with degrees is actually well in excess of 10%. Yeah. The emphasis, instead of getting a BA degree in politics, and I'm sorry about hammering on this specific one, but there's a shortage of people that are drone technicians or drone pilots even. There's a shortage of all sort of technical people in the country, and we need to put emphasis on that. And I just want to emphasize the following as well. In a modern economy, you can't get a piece of paper, call it a qualification, and think you're done with your qualifications. You have to keep on learning, and you have to patch out all the time on your skills and to make sure that you're on top of the most recent technology.
But in this situation then, David, what would the private sector do that the public sector is not able to do? A lot of the private sector institutions are themselves offering these degree courses that are offered by public universities. So why call for, defunding the public ones and even a possible closure and redirecting the funding to the private sector when they're actually going to be offering the same?
Yeah, no. I just want, well, the reality is, if we look at the quality of what's been happening in our public universities the last couple of years, there are not many of them, not all, of course, are not very well run. But it doesn't mean that there's not a role for the state. I believe in a small role for the state, but it certainly is a very important role for the state. And the role of the state, when you put more emphasis on private sector tertiary education, is that the state must make sure that certain qualities are maintained, certain educational qualities are maintained. And when you look at the private sector tertiary institutions in South Africa, maybe we have to look at them and say maybe we should change some of them. Maybe some of them should become nursing schools, for example, or education colleges, for example, and things like that. We've got a huge shortage of good educators in South Africa as well. So we have to relook at the whole thing and simply accept that the quality of some of our public institutions are not what it's supposed to be, and the management is also not what it's supposed to be. And also, crucially important, we do not provide the necessary skills to prepare our people to participate in this modern economy.
All right, Davi, I've got to thank you for your time. That's economist David Roth there. And listening to that is Victor Khomoyeswana, who is a writer and commentator, as well as the Executive Director of Marketing and Communications at the University of Limpopo. Victor, good morning. So you heard what David Roth had to say. What about his arguments do you not agree with? We're churning out pieces of paper, degrees, in an economy that's summing up his argument, in an economy that actually requires skills and proficiency in technology.
Morning, Thulas, and to SAFM listeners. David Roth is a respected economist, a commentator, and he works for a very respected company, the Efficient Group. His views are taken seriously by lots of people at different levels. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to ask him a question of which private university he studied at. Because as a product of a public university himself, he should know, especially among others, vets, which is very, very organically linked with the private sector. I would like to say three things. One, the universities are, he's already mentioned and admitted, hugely reduce the chances of somebody being unemployed. If unemployment, we were told yesterday, is 32.9% among graduates or people with higher education, will be just around 9-10%. Secondly, when you are looking at the public sector education, at universities in particular, and you look at how many young people are given a shot at life, because they don't have any other chance, including the failure of the private sector to create opportunities as patriotic private sector employers that should say, what is wrong with these universities that needs to be changed, and work with them, just like they would be employing people from the universities. The third thing is, universities are already doing lots of things. There's a trend in higher education, Thulas, called micro-credentialing. Other people will call it short learning programs. These are competency-based programs that, because of the culture of lifelong learning, universities understand they have to create programs that are linked. So, for example, you get an institution, including the one that David Roth went to, VETS, that will come into a province like Limpopo and work with the government. When people get elected into office as public servants or as public representatives, they will run competency-based programs to help them understand Public Finance Management Act, Municipal Finance Management Act. These are now competency-based programs. So the issue I'm taking is that you can't say most public universities should be closed when you know that, among other things, public universities provide the very bulk of the workforce that we have. We have a shortage of teachers, we have a shortage of nurses. Universities train those, and they train very good, competent educators.
Is there something to be said, though? Is there something to be said, though, Victor, for a failure to adapt on the part of public universities to the changing realities of the economy, what the economy demands versus the skills that they are churning out, the new technological skills that David Roth alludes to, as opposed to, he kept making the example of a BA degree in political studies.
That's another tragedy of the public discourse in South Africa, that we need STEM graduates and we don't need humanities, we don't need social scientists. That's a tragic, tragic approach. Because tell me something. So let me first admit, yes, universities should, like we are preaching ongoing learning every day, continue ongoing learning themselves, as in they must continue to adapt, which means they must talk to the public sector, the world of work, and ask what are the adaptations that are required. But if you did that, Thulas, you would find that you need humanities, you need social sciences, you need balance. Let me explain to you. When you look at the problems that plague society today, yes, drone technologies can help us, definitely. But the problems that plague society include mass shootouts, where somebody carries a rifle into a shopping center, shoots people. They include gender-based violence, where intimate partner problems are troubling us and they are making our society dysfunctional. Drug abuse, where young people are running off to drugs. Parents, including fathers who just abandon their families. Are you telling me that these problems are lesser problems than the failure to have drone technologies? No. We need a balanced approach to education, including having social scientists who will tell us how to do things better in society, how to be better fathers, how to be better parents, how to be better neighbors with one another, and not just be. So that's what I'm saying. That another. And that's why I accepted the invitation, because when I work at a public university, I see how important psychologists are and how important nurses are, how important teachers are. And if you look at banks, by the way, there's an increasing trend, including companies like Efficient Group, which are beginning to hire more Bachelor of Arts degrees, graduates. They are wanting artists because they know that a good economist like David Ruud needs an artist to work with them to be able to produce even a financial model for a financial institution.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Fascinating debate that the two of you have got us started on. That is Victor Khomuyaswana. He's a writer, speaker and commentator, as well as the Executive Director for Marketing and Communications at the University of Limpopo. What do you think? Weigh in on this conversation. Give me a call, send me a WhatsApp voice note.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, our advice this morning has been to avoid, where possible, running into the Buccleuch interchange. It's heavily backed up. There is a fatal collision scene. It is on the, effectively, the N1 M1, so it's inside Buccleuch interchange. So coming through from Midrand Centurion, i.e. leaving Pretoria, on your way down through Midrand, that is heavy. But the other impact is on the N3 North. A lot of traffic will come off the N3 through Buccleuch and turn onto the Mike 1. You're basically turning into that crash and into that traffic. So N3 equally bad. Big queues effectively from Eland's interchange deep in Germiston all the way through. If you are coming out of Pretoria, an option would be the N14 and the 511, which is a little bit busy actually coming into four ways, or the R55. You could take the R55 right through the Woodmead and join the Mike 1, just do a little sort of more open detour if you like this morning. If you're looking at the R21 as the alternative from Pretoria to Joburg, you've got the roadworks around Bloemfontein and Benoni X is causing some delays as well. Durban's M7, again, really bad if you're going into Pinetown. There's massive traffic queues there this morning from Hunt Stepman up over St John's Avenue Bridge, some traffic lights down in the area. Crash at Queensborough on the M7 heading towards the Bluff, so that's heavy coming out of the Pinetown area. A lot of traffic on the M4, Umhlanga to Blue Lagoon, a lot of traffic on the N2 between Umhlanga and Kumashi, and of course you've got the rumble strips on the N3, which is just causing amazing backlogs, morning peak, afternoon peak, and across the day as well. Yesterday, motorists stuck in 45-minute queues at about 10 o'clock in the morning through to 11:12 just to get into Durban through those strip areas. The other big story, Cape Town, Tableview, major delays. Obviously, Malabongwe closed at Dunoon because of day 3 of protesting. Any route through Tableview is heavily backed up. The impact being felt right out near Richwood, near Burgundy Estate, even up at Melkbos as motorists driving up the R27 towards Melkbos to try and cut along that M19. So it really is quite wide and far felt is the impact of this closure and protest at Dunoon. Also, a couple of crashes around Cape Town, 35th Avenue, Francie Fund Sale. That's all really busy. And a Scholar transport vehicle involved in a crash, Stellenbosch Arterial at Noyensfontein. Some really heavy traffic that side of Kales River. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me start with Sfiso in Durban. Good morning to you, Sfiso. You want to talk education this morning?
Greetings to us. I think it's very rich of David Roth to criticize institutions like UNISA when we know that such institutions are a trendsetter. Today, many institutions are doing distant learning because UNISA started it, but they only started when COVID came in and students were forced to be studying at home. I think as a country, we would rather have unemployed academics than having a country of just illiterates. And the degree that he's targeting, which is political science, it's a very good degree because it gives us woke society who understand politics, who understand where we come from and where we need to go to. So if he's an agent for Boston and Rosebank, he must try other means to canvass that opinion. Not to say we must close. We already made that mistake by closing institutions like, nursing and teaching colleges, and look where we are today.
Gotcha. Sfiso, I've got to move on. That's Sfiso in Durban. Let me go to Thomas in Newcastle. Good morning to you, Thomas. Also on the same topic.
Hi, Mapucha. How are you, sir?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good, man. I'm a bit disappointed, though, with Victor, because if I heard the gentleman properly, he was not criticizing. But I heard him say we should be looking at what society and markets need now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it is true. If we do humanities and all that, and then go back and be employed or seek employment from the state, which state has no means of drawing taxes and all that because no one is standing on his own, then we are regressing as a nation.
Yeah.
We should be looking at situations where we'll go. He made an example, for instance, the professor, I can't remember his name, forgive me.
David Roth.
He says we should be doing, for instance, drone licenses.
Yeah.
No one heard that.
So I think Victor did hear that, Thomas. And Victor was saying we need a balanced approach. As much as we need those high-tech modern economy skills, we will always need the humanities. And he made those examples. Where the humanities come in.
I agree. That is true. But the balance is we're moving from humanities. Right now, we have a lot of people, the doctors, the teachers, they are toiling for not being employed by the state.
Yeah.
Because the state has no money, has no means.
All right.
But we need people who are going to come up with new ideas on using the sun, for instance, for energy.
Got you. Thomas in Newcastle, thank you for that. Let me move to Loyiso in the South Coast. Good morning to you, also on the same topic.
Yes, how are you?
Very well, how are you? Please go ahead.
Yes, I will talk. I have a solution.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of
solutions.
people know about this when it comes to universities.
Yeah.
A typical person with a BSc degree struggles, I know a lot, struggling to get employed, like one majored in chemistry or physics or something. They end up going for a postgrad degree in education. The solution is right there. There should be the postgrad degrees should specialize. For example, he made an example of drone technologies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A basic person who studied physics have got all the theory, Newtonian physics, avionics, fluid dynamics. They just need 1 year postgrad diploma.
Yeah.
He can go out of a university, open a startup, build his own drones.
Gotcha.
Design them, do that. The same with BCom. It's only 2 BCom streams that are relevant to the industry. BCom in investment science and the one that leads to being an accountant or something.
Yeah.
But those people, on that 4th year of BCom, it could be converted to 1 postgrad degree that gives you a specific skill, which is which is much better than what is offered by the technicals.
All right, Loyiso, there in the South Coast, I've got you talking about specialization being key at a postgraduate level. Bonagele in Cape Town, you want to talk on something completely different. Tell me about what you think about this situation with the 49 South Africans who've migrated or have become quote-unquote refugees in the United States.
Absolutely, I'm going to be very brief, unlike these previous callers. They can take too long. Come on.
Go ahead. Just go ahead. Don't be like that. Go ahead.
I'm actually disappointed with this only 49. Only 49. I expected thousands of white people. I'm happy about our government talking nonsense and all that, being negative. In fact, including Africans who are talking on these radio shows and radio, who are complaining this government is with this negativity. They can go and join this 49. But I'm disappointed. Why not thousands? They can go.
Well, Bonagele, people can be unhappy about their government and decide to force a change and decide that we are going to agitate and campaign for change rather than leave the country. You don't leave the country because you are unhappy.
Look, what is this government not doing? There's a lot that has been done. There's a lot that must be done. Especially those who have said, no, you don't have Democrats. That's absolutely nonsense. Where were they? You took 31 years, you think people will sacrifice their lives, my friend. I'm angry in bite. My airtime is finished right now.
No,
there's a lot not complaining.
All right, got your point there. That's Bonagele there, talking about those 49 Afrikaners who left the country and are deemed by the Trump administration to be refugees, and they have accepted that designation. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Usundiso building arson case to resume today and celebrations in Damascus following Trump's decision to lift sanctions. Good morning. The trial of a man accused of arson in the fire at the Usundiso building in the Johannesburg CBD is expected to resume this morning in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, Ekurhuleni. Sitembiso Mdlalose faces 76 counts of murder. During the Gampepe Commission of Inquiry into the fire in 2023, he admitted to starting the blaze that killed mostly foreign nationals. However, he changed his tune in the trial. Sasha Naidu reports.
Mdlalose is expected to return to the dock this morning for the resumption of his trial. Yesterday, Mdlalose's father, Beki Kumalo, expressed disappointment in his son's confession to a magistrate. Mdlalose allegedly confessed to committing arson to the magistrate. However, during the High Court trial, he recanted his statement, saying that he was under the influence of drugs at the time of his confession. However, his confession was declared admissible and it was read into the record.
The trial within a trial in the asbestos roof removal case will resume in the High Court in Bloemfontein in the Free State today. The matter was postponed on Thursday last week after a state witness fell ill. Judge Philip Lopshaw was expected to deliver judgment on whether or not other defense lawyers can cross-examine the state witness, who's an investigating officer in the matter. The case relates to a 255 million rand tender. The trial within a trial follows the insistence of one of the accused, Murwadi Chalota, who is former Premier Ace Magashule's personal assistant, that her extradition from the US was unlawful. Palisa Machane reports.
Last week, Ace Magashule's legal representative, Lawrence Hodes, requested to cross-examine the state witness. Magashule was the Premier of the Free State at the time of the alleged illegal awarding of the multi-million rand tender. Moradi Cholota was the Premier's personal assistant. She was previously positioned to be a state witness, but according to the investigating officer, she became uncooperative in 2021 when she was interviewed by investigators in the USA. Hence the decision to have her arrested and extradited to South Africa to face criminal charges alongside Magashule and others.
A man arrested for alleged illegal hunting and trespassing in the Kruger National Park will appear in court soon. Rangers spotted the tracks of two individuals inside the park. Provincial police spokesperson Jabu Ndubane says they shot and wounded one suspect while the other fled. The arrested suspect, a Mozambican national, is currently under police guard in hospital. He was found in possession of a hunting rifle, 6 rounds of ammunition and an axe. He will be charged with illegal hunting and trespassing. Members of a lobby group, Women on Farms, are demanding improved working and living conditions. They marched to the offices of the Western Cape Labour and Employment Department to hand over a memorandum yesterday. The women say exposure to chemicals, including pesticides, is compromising their health. They also say their salaries are below the minimum wage. The group's Julia Machankana read out the memorandum.
And engagements with Minister Muth to discuss issues pertaining to labour rights of farm workers. A meeting with the provisional deal, including Mr. Ntamo, the inspectorates, heads of labour centres from Worcester, Didorans, Sierras, Paarl and Somerset West, and Totterbucks, the compensation fund by 6 June. Launch immediate and full investigation into the cases listed above, including the deploying qualified inspectors to conduct health and safety inspection on farms.
And finally, Syrians have taken to the streets of the capital, Damascus, to celebrate U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to lift economic sanctions on the country. Trump made the announcement in Saudi Arabia, where the de facto ruler Mohammed bin Salman hosted him. The BBC's Luz Doucet reports that Trump's visit is significant for Syria.
The new leadership, which took over after the ousting of the decades-old dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad, inherited an economy which is strangled by an extensive web of international and U.S. sanctions. The Europeans have started to lift them. The sanctions have to be lifted if Syria is to have any chance at developing economically. The UN says 90% of Syrians are now living under the poverty line.
Recapping the top story, the trial of a man accused of arson in the fire at the Usindiso building in the Johannesburg CBD is expected to resume this morning in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, Ekurhuleni. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Looking for some feel-good news? Jermaine, a 43-year-old man, feels like a winner because he now saves 360 Rand a month on his car insurance premium. That's right, Jermaine switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 360 Rand a month on his 2021 Mazda 3 1.5 Dynamic. Outsurance clients always get something out. You could too. Get a quote today and see how much they could save you on your car insurance. Make today the day you switch and save with Outsurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headline Soccer, the Stellenbosch coach Steve Barker has tipped Mamelodi Sundowns player Ikram Reyners as a serious contender for the PSL Player of the Season award. And in golf, South Africa's Dean Burmester will make his debut at Quail Hollow. That's in the first round of the PGA Championships in North Carolina. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays very heavy around the Buccleuch interchange in Joburg. We've been warning about this morning. It's a crash inside the Buccleuch, sort of N1 onto the M1, but it's having a multiple impact on routes. The N1 South coming directly into that is very heavy from as far back as the old Joburg Road exit in Centurion. The N3 into its back to Batley from Germiston, Bedfordview, and the N1 from Randburg, solid all the way from sort of halfway between Bayers and Malabongwe up into Buccleuch as well. It is a morning to, where possible, be avoiding a route into Buccleuch interchange. N14 driving to Pretoria. Now the crash on the Krugersdorp Highway, the Brockfontein interchange. So after the R55, that gets pretty heavy. And there's a crash on the Ben Schoeman section of the N14 after Eupheus Road, leaving Pretoria. That's slow as well. Durban, the M7 towards the Bluff, a truck crash between North Dean and Belleville Road, Queensborough area. Very heavy getting along that section, leaving Pinetown today. Cape Town all badly backed up out of Tableview because of the closure of Malabongwe Drive. The impact being felt felt as far away as Melkbos, Richwood, Burgundy Estates, Summer Greens, Edgemead and Boortesuk. It really has a dramatic impact on traffic with just that single closure of Malabongwe Drive. Also a crash right in the heart of Parow, 35th Avenue, Francie Fun Sale. Some quite heavily backed up traffic into that junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's coming up to 10 minutes after 8 on this Wednesday. It's great to be in your company. We're into the third hour of the Morning Brief, and I don't feel, for a change, I don't feel that I need to tell you what we've been talking about, simply because the lines have been buzzing. So just for the benefit of the few who are maybe joining the conversation at this point, we've been talking quite a lot of reflection about the arguments advanced earlier on by social justice activist Kim Heller in relation to the 49 South Africans who have decided that they will accept an illegitimate designation as refugees in the United States, and they will leave this country. And Kim Heller had some really strong comments to make about the need for reflection among white South Africans, particularly as regards the issues to do with white privilege. So if you heard that conversation, you will know and you will understand just how much it's got the lines buzzing. So I look forward to hearing from you if you agree with Kim Heller or even if you disagree with her. I'll take your calls. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll also take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. That's the one conversation. But we've also been talking about the issues around education, whether universities are fit for purpose. The universities, particularly public universities, are they producing the kinds of skills that the economy needs at this particular point? And as it so happens, we're having this conversation off the back of the latest statistics coming through from Stats SA that show that there were 291,000 job losses in the first quarter of the year. So all of those conversations are in the mix this morning. But I'm open to you putting other issues on the table. As I said, the number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is the third hour of the Morning Brief, and it starts now.
This May, SAFM celebrates Africa Month with you as we honor the legacy of the Organization of African Unity. We bring you rich conversations and the vibrant sounds of Africa. Music that moves the soul. This is SAFM.
South African tourism brings you one of the biggest must-visit events on the global calendar. Africa's Travel Indaba, happening from the 13th to the 15th of May at the Durban ICC. Catch Oliver Dixon live from Africa's Travel Indaba with South African tourism this Wednesday for all the highlights, live updates and more. Take a glimpse of the future of African travel. Africa's Travel Indaba, brought to you by South African Tourism.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's hear from you. Let me take some of your voice notes now.
Good morning. The big thing there about university degrees, it's not about having a university degree gives you the edge in the workplace. It's about which degree. There are 5,000 people holding a degree in marketing. No one needs that. You need to get the correct degree.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. I agree with Kim Heller. What a wonderful woman she is. And I believe if many white South Africans were like, hey, this country will be great, things will be working for everyone. I've seen her book on Twitter and I'm going to buy it. Thank you.
Thulasizwe, it's Yalezo here in Tsolo. Look, man, I don't know. I think people are overhyping this thing or obsessed over the government. It's not necessarily the government duty to create jobs. I don't know. I think we need to understand that not all of the people will have to work for government. Private companies and people should be able to create jobs for themselves. Please. Thank you.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, we'll come back to your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes in a moment, but we want to bring you an update about a march that will be taking place a bit later on today with what is expected to be thousands of artists, cultural workers, creative entrepreneurs and citizens, we're told, are going to be taking to the streets for a national day of protest and performance under the banner of the Cultural and Creative Industries March. So let's speak to Leletu Moses, who is an arts activist who joins us now. Good morning to you, Leletu, and thank you for your time. You're framing this as an issue that's a march that's meant to highlight the centrality of the arts industry in South Africa, that it's not a by the way or a side gig. What in the way that it's approached in the country makes you believe that it continues to be taken as a sideshow as opposed to be a central industry in our economy?
Hi, Thulasizwe. I think one obvious way that tells you that it's a side gig is the fact that the industry is not regulated, not properly regulated. There isn't legislative regulatory measures that have been taken to, manage the industry properly and make sure that all its profits, are accounted for properly. Number two, it's the fact that every change in ministry brings a change in how things are done. It feels like an experimental portfolio where a minister will come in and say, okay, I'm going to work with these 5 people, and that's how I'll consult the sector. The next minister will come and say, forget those 5 organizations. Let's now work with a new setup and set up new sectoral councils and. So the kids, there's just always a change in the space that tells you that there is no clear policy on how to drive the industry forward.
And in fact, you're quite critical of the way that, I was looking at some of your grievances. A lot of them have to do with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, particularly at the highest level, at the executive level. Tell me about what you believe are issues around funding, transparency, abuse of discretionary powers. How are these playing themselves out at the moment?
Thulasizwe, currently this whole march is actually driven by the MGE. When we're talking about transparency in funding, that had 2 calls and still no results having come out. The first call that closed off on the 10th of Jan, and then the second call, which was revising the first call. And there was a lot of confusion within that as well, because when a communication was sent to say we're revising the call...
Just to make sure we take everyone along with us, MGE is the Mzansi Golden Economy,
the Mzansi Golden Economy, basically a funding stream that affirms the creative industry as the gold of the country in terms of driving the economy forward as well, understanding that the arts can be a viable employer for many, many people within the arts and within the other supporting industries that give life to the arts. So when on the 10th of Jan, submissions were made for the funding call, but on the 7th, we were told that the call was being revised because there were many complaints about it. One was the fact that NPCs were being excluded by forcing them to submit a letter from the Department of Social Development, which was outside of the law because the business that the MGE is calling for is work that would be done within the country. And the new NPO Act, as amended, basically says when an NPC is doing business outside of the borders of the country, then that NPC must also register as an NPO with the DSD. However, this time around, NPCs are just excluded regardless of the fact that all business is supposed to be happening within the borders of the country. Secondly, when they revised the call, they reduced the threshold from 9 million to 2 million under the banner that says we want to make sure that the scope of the funding is spread as much as possible, which is well understood. However, when they said to the creatives, those who had already applied for the 10th of Jan and were successfully verified need not reapply for the revised, it gave the understanding that the results from the 10th would still come. However, on the 20th of March, that tune changed to say everybody must reapply. So there's that. You do get a sense of the people at the very top are kind of doing, I don't know, some form of guesswork. Let's do this today. Let's do this tomorrow. We're not too sure exactly which direction to go. And then finally, okay, let's just do it now.
It felt to me when I was reading your grievances, Leletu, that you are accusing specific people, if not a specific person. Some of what you are saying, for me, it just sounds like it's at the highest level of the department. Let me give you an example. When you talk about political interference and patronage-based CEO and board appointments, who's engaging in these practices?
It's the people at the very top. Because you've got NAC advertising for board positions currently, all these are the institutions that are associated with the DSAC advertising for board membership. And yet you don't feel that there's a transparent manner in which this is being done. And proportionally, you feel like the representation is not fair. And so the obvious suspicion is that the people with the most influence at DSAC are the people in the director position.
All right. Lastly, then, Leletu, you framed this as a cause that's not just for the artists to get involved with. Why should South Africans take this cause seriously, and why should we care about it, and who will be part of the march today?
Because who heals the psychology of the people of South Africa if not the artists? What's life without the music that we play and the poetry that we write? What is radio without that music, without Miriam Makeba's influence and? This is not just about today and the MGE that is failing today. It's about making sure that it succeeds tomorrow and that it carries on with the heritage that has been left behind by the Winston Johners of this space, by the Miriam Makebas who are already gone. So imagine South Africa silent, South African radio silent with no music playing because suddenly nobody cares for the artists of this country. That's why it's important for South African artists to rise, for them to also ask these pertinent questions of why are artists dying like paupers when the industry has so much money, when the department has got so much money to go around, because they care for the actors they see on TV. They perceive a certain lifestyle for them. They make them the superstars. And that's why they should care. That's why they should accompany us to say, we no longer want to die as paupers. We no longer want to be treated as, people who just have hobbies. We want our people to support us and we want to be treated as business and as contributors to the GDP of this country.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That is Leletu Moses, who is an artist and an art activist.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Let's go to Tembelihle in Mthatha. Good morning to you, Tembelihle. You want to weigh in on the unemployment crisis in the country?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Thembekile.
Tembekile, my apologies. It's actually written properly. It's me. It's on my side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thembekile Kanise. Thank you very much, Thulasizwe. I am noting the statistics that have been released now on the unemployment rate in South Africa. I am working for the non-profit sector for a number of years now. First of all, we are employers too, no longer about projects, but we employ people that have to be part of the employment system for a very long time. But I'm worried that it seems a lot of us are leaving the challenges of employment to government, because if you see that a lot of even at the tendering system, the companies, they are employed by government indirectly, because if you are looking for tenders, you get them from government most of the time, and that for me is my worry. But I also note that you know, it is very difficult for us as citizens to try and help government to really focus on the idea of employment. We do not know what are we able to produce as a country, as a people, because we must know what is it that we can produce where I am, and when can we begin to do that. For instance, in the old Tambo, we always say that there is a lot of land for agriculture, but even the young people, they are not employed, but they don't take the opportunity to begin to use the land for the same purposes.
All right. Tembekile, thank you for that. That's Tembekile in Mthatha there. I've got to move on. Let me go to Lawrence in Mpumalanga. Good morning to you, Lawrence. You want to talk to me about the issue of tariffs this morning?
Yes, morning, sir. How are you?
Very well. Good morning.
Thank you. I would like to talk about two things, the artifact and tariff.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think the move that has been taken by the Chinese to lower the tariff from 30 to 130 something to 20% is a good move. Because you remember when people they increase tariff, it also affects us people on the customers who are the one who are going to pay the brand.
Yes.
Yes, that's point one. Point two, that's very important. I saw on the news about the artifact that were returned to what you call the country Benin.
Yes.
So, what I've learned there, I think African people were doing a lot of things. Those designers are on top of the game. Even the one that was returned from Eastern Cape that was doing. So I encourage you just maybe to dig more and interview those people, how those artifacts.
Nice suggestion there, Lawrence. We'll take
because
it up.
So I learned for that these people have got a lot of skills.
Yeah.
In Benin and also Kosas and Pedis and everything. I think
these were returned from where? From Britain?
Yeah, from Britain. And those people, my assumption is that those African people were a good designer. You must Google this artifact.
No, I'll definitely do that. Lawrence in Mpumalanga, thank you for that. Just giving us a suggestion for us to follow through. I don't know if there was a recent return of those artifacts or he's alluding to something that happened in the past, but always an important subject matter to return to.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning once again. So it's safe to say, the Sundowns have run away with it, yeah? It's gone.
The horse has bolted out of the stable.
No consolation for those who didn't win last weekend and hoping that maybe there's still a chance. There's no chance.
I wonder who you're referring to. But nevertheless, some of them are still celebrating, I must admit. But we do have Sundowns. They are in the driving seat as well. They'll play Chippa United tonight. But the Stellenbosch coach, Steve Barker, tipping Ikram Reyners as a serious contender for the PSL Player of the Season award. Reyners, who's now with Mamelodi Sundowns, bagged his 13th league goal in their 3-0 victory over Stellenbosch, the club he left last year. He also boasts 9 assists this season. second only to Calypso Machalwa. But he's not alone in the race. Lucas Ribeiro is still ahead in goals, and Marcelo Allender continuing to pull the strings midfield. Let's go to the Belgian Pro League now, and that side, Genk, has become the first team to admit its admiration for South Africa's young talent following the exploits of Amajita at the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament currently underway in Egypt. This was revealed by the RC Genk scout in the tournament, Bernard Yao Kamotsi. Kamotsi was part of the CAF Technical Study Group, and he reviewed the AFCON Under-20 tournament, saying he's impressed with Amajita's technical and tactical ability.
Of course, I've seen a couple of players that I think has a level. A player like Jordi, for me, he has not scored a lot of goals, but he's a player that has shown a lot of quality. Yeah, more than number 9. He's quick, the intensity is there, the runs that he makes, even though sometimes he doesn't receive the ball. I can see those runs, and also Taylor Smith has been so amazing in this tournament. For me, he's one of the best defenders that I've seen in the tournament so far. So, of course, South Africa is doing well, and I like that.
Cricket now. Proteas coach Shukri Conrad says the national team will back themselves by sticking to their processes ahead of next month's World Test Championship final against Australia at Lord's in London. Conrad named a familiar-looking 15-man squad led by regular captain Themba Bavuma.
I don't think we need to be doing anything out of the extraordinary in order to beat Australia. We probably go in as underdogs, and rightly so. Not because of ability, but maybe just in experience. I'm very confident that when we play to our best, that we've got every chance of beating them. And like I've said before, we're not just happy to compete.
And finally, golf. South Africa's Dean Burmester is gearing up for his PGA Championship debut at Quail Hollow in North Carolina and says he only played the course on PlayStation until now. The LIV golfer is hoping for solid rounds as he put himself in contention for the title. Now, Burmester recently nailed a hole-in-one in Korea and believes that the forgiving fairways in Charlotte will suit his power game. He'll be joined by fellow South Africans Eric van Rooyen and Christian Bezuidenhout as they face golf's toughest field. That's a wrap. We'll have more sports. Top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, 2 men accused of the murder of businessman and alleged underworld crime boss Mark Liffman will remain behind bars. Johannes Jacobs and Gert Bezuidenhout appeared in the Western Cape High Court yesterday and were denied bail. The trial of a man accused of arson in the fire at the Usundiso building in the Johannesburg CBD is expected to resume this morning in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, Ekurhuleni. He is facing 76 counts of murder. And the DA has launched a scathing attack on Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's administration, accusing it of failing to curb rising unemployment in the province. Gauteng's unemployment rate has increased to 34.7%, with 2.7 million residents now jobless. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A couple of collisions around the Tshwane region this morning on the N14. First up, the Ben Schoeman Highway. Big crash south of the Euthias Road, heading down towards Centurion. One lane open, quite a backlog leaving Pretoria. And on the other N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, a crash at the N1 Brockfontein. So it's very heavy from the R55 Pretoria West exit. The Bekloo interchange remains heavy. A fatal crash this morning on the N1 M1. Big delays coming through Midrand this morning on that run down towards Joburg. Queues from Old Joburg Road. Heavy from Four Ways on the M1 up to Bekloo, and very heavy from Edenvale on the N3 getting up into Bekloo as well. Crossing to Durban, truck crash this morning on the M7 leaving Pinetown on your way towards the Bluff between the Queensborough and Malvern exits, so that's still heavy. The N3 inbound over those rumble strips, effectively queues from about St John's Avenue Bridge on the M13 in central Pinetown. And just a heads up, yesterday the N3 inbound was stuck in about a 45-minute queue most of the morning up to about early part of the afternoon, so just be aware of that. Cape Town crash, M5, coming up from Southfield and Grassy Park just by Dick Burton. That's causing a delay, and still very heavy around the greater Tableview area with the ongoing closure of Malabongwe Drive at Dunoon and a need to reroute and congest many routes in that area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say, well, good morning once again to Dowling. Dowling, we'll start with the devastating news coming through from Stats SA regarding the unemployment situation.
So the local jobless rate was edging higher in the first quarter, sitting at 32.9% from 31.9% in the fourth quarter. According to Statistics South Africa, the number of jobless people increased to 8.2 million. The decline in employment was largely driven by losses in the formal sector, with 245,000 jobs shed, as well as losses in trade, construction, and private households. But the informal sector saw a gain of 17,000 jobs, and sectors like transport, finance and utilities also experienced growth. Commenting on the print, economist Cassie Sparks said that despite recent reforms, many South Africans have yet to benefit from job opportunities. Structural challenges such as a skills gap and stagnant economy have worsened unemployment rates, particularly among young people. The youth unemployment rate increased to 46.1% from 44.6%, with 151,000 more young people becoming unemployed and 153,000 losing their jobs. This, of course, really disheartening numbers to us.
Yeah.
Now, at a briefing, Stats SA's Risinga Maluleka noted that this was the first time in his 7.5 years as Statistician General that the number of young people not in employment, education, or training reached 3.8 million, further showing how vulnerable, the young people are in the labor market.
Let's talk mining, and Dowling. Tell me about Exxaro and their plans to buy manganese assets. This is going to cost them somewhat, 12 billion rand?
That's right, Thulas. And some good news coming out of Exxaro. Every time we hear of Exxaro, we hear about leadership changes, some infighting. So some good news this time around. They are making progress with their green metals strategy. The mine is set to acquire a portfolio of manganese assets worth nearly 12 billion rands. Now, the deal, which involves several major manganese mines in the Northern Cape's Kalahari manganese field, will give Exxaro controlling stakes in these operations. The acquisition is expected to boost the miner's green credentials as it diversifies beyond coal. Now, the transaction, which is subject to regulatory approvals, will be funded from Exxaro's cash reserves and undrawn bank facilities. The acquired assets include a 100% stake in Ntsimbintle Mining, which holds a 50% interest in Tshipi Entle Manganese Mining, and stakes in Jupiter Mines, Mukala Manganese, and Hotasol Manganese Mines. Now, the Kalahari Manganese field is a critical global supply hub, as it's the world's largest known land-based manganese deposit. Other JSE-listed miners like South 32, Anglo-American, African Rainbow Minerals, and ASO are also shareholders in other manganese mines in that Northern Cape region.
And then lastly, Dowling, what kind of a day can we expect in the markets on this Wednesday?
So local markets likely to have a mixed day following international peers. In terms of company news, it's a quiet day here at home, so traders will be tracking global news. And then over on the currency front, the rand making slight gains back under the 18.30 mark. It is sitting at 18.29 to the dollar this hour. In Wall Street, futures are in the green, but we are starting to see a bit of a pullback with the trade deal euphoria fading. Then over in Asia, sentiment returning to positivity, with most stocks now on track to end the day higher.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. She's kept you updated on the economy, business and the markets over the last 3 hours here on The Morning Brief.
Banyana Bus Style are confident nothing will stop their winning mentality, while Richmond United ladies are highly spirited to display a first-class performance. Gauteng is up against Northern Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the delight of Mzansi's women's football, Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC versus Richmond United Ladies on Sunday 18 May at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC One and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, let's focus on this now. Issues to do with land reform and restitution. Government has spent over 217 million rand settling land claims in the 2024-2025 financial year. That's 217 million rand that was spent in that financial year. And this contradicts persistent claims of unlawful land seizures. The funding supported the purchase of privately owned land to settle 287 claims, largely submitted by Black South Africans. This was revealed in a parliamentary reply and comes as Rise Mzansi slams misinformation campaigns, particularly from the alleged asylum seekers and refugees in the United States, accusing them of spreading falsehoods about the Expropriation Act. Let's say good morning to Makashule Kana and Rise Mzansi, Member of Parliament. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. I don't imagine that you were just asking these questions in a vacuum. Tell me what information gap you sought to plug when you were asking these questions of the Department of Land Reform.
Good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and the SAFM listeners. So there have been a lot of lies and misinformation that has been spread about the country, that has been spread up about the situation around land reform in the country. So what I then sought to do, because when there are lies, you then ask for official, information that needs to be given by the department. So I asked the minister to then just give a sense, and I didn't want to go as far back as like say 2019 or 2014. I just said, all right, in the last financial year, how much has government paid out in terms of land restitution and land redistribution to assist black people that had their land taken away from them, that they didn't have opportunities to have or participate in farming activities. And that was informed by all these lies that government is preparing itself to then seize land or grab land illegally. And this was almost a follow-up to the question that I had asked the Minister of Public Works to say, has the department done any expropriation in the last 10 years? And which he said, no, the department has not effected the Expropriation Act to expropriate land without compensation in any instance in the last 10 years. So we are bombarded with a lot of misinformation around the state of the country, the state of land reform in the country, that government is not paying for the land that it resettles South Africans that have had their land taken away in the past.
But what do we glean then if we park the disinformation campaign for a moment and focus on the progress on land restitution? What do we glean from the fact that 287 claims were settled in that financial year, 2024-2025, to the tune of 217 million rand, against the backdrop of what we know to be close to 6,000 restitution claims, the so-called old order restitution claims that were not settled by the end of the year last year?
So there are a couple of things that we learn from this. One is that government continues to at least try to settle some of the claims, but the pace at which these claims are settled, it's a lot slower than one would have hoped. But there is progress in that direction, especially because one of the other questions that I had asked was around the productive farms that have been purchased so that South Africans, black, this is an inclusive use of black, including Africans, colored, and Indians, they can participate in the farming community. So what's encouraging is that the government is not just settling or purchasing the land that is lying there, not being utilized productively, but it's also acquiring productive farms that you can then get to assist black South Africans to also participate in the agricultural space.
So Makashule, tell me about the other element. You touched on it just a few seconds ago. This was the question to the Minister of Rural of Land Reform. that has to do with the restitution claims and the settlements thereof. But parallel to that, you're saying you had asked a question of the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure regarding expropriation. And the answer that you got, I believe, was quite comprehensive. It covered a period of a decade from 2014 to 2024.
Yes.
Objectively speaking, based on the facts on the ground at hand before Minister Dean McPherson, has any expropriation happened in the country? And if so, was it with or without compensation?
So the expropriation that has happened was with compensation. As you might be familiar, for instance, where even when the Gau train was built, there was land that was expropriated, and the people that owned that land or that resided in that land were compensated. We've had cases in the Western Cape and other parts of the country wherein to extend certain roads, to put in certain infrastructure, there was land that was expropriated. Even now, when the Minister McPherson responded to me, he indicated that there is land that is earmarked for Eskom, so that Eskom can put its infrastructure to, ensure that there's energy security in the country, and those land parcels, there will be compensation for those land parcels. So there hasn't been a case, even though the Constitution or even the latest Expropriation Act does provide for a nil compensation. We haven't had an instance in democratic South Africa where there has been land that was expropriated without any compensation paid to the landowners or the people who were staying in that land. So all this that is being said about the government of South Africa and the people of South Africa, it's all lies and misinformation that's designed to undermine the democratic South Africa.
Lastly, Makashule, we have the information, but how do we use it then to support diplomatic efforts? Because there's a growing sense among some quarters that the data, the information, the statistics that we hold, the official information, really doesn't matter because there's more at play than a misunderstanding of what the situation is on the ground.
So what we need to do, especially yourself, Thulasizwe, is to continue to share with the people of South Africa the true state of the land reform, and also how the land acquisitions are being done in the country, so that we can drown out this falsehood, this misinformation that some continue to peddle, even when those that were doing nothing. There's no farmer that has gone as part of a refugee to the United States, but people want to portray that there are farmers that have left on that plane on Sunday. There's no farmer that has left. Farmers are still here. Even the NAMPO event that's taking place, farmers are here, and all these things need to be countered by the truth about this country. That's the only way that we can deal with it. There's no way we can fight falsehood by peddling another falsehood. So the only thing that we can do is to continue to tell the truth about the state of South Africa.
And just for clarity, Makashule, from the answer you received from Minister McPherson covering the period 2014 to 2024, am I correct in understanding that the answer was that there was no expropriation either with or without compensation during that period, that 10-year period? No expropriation happened?
There was expropriation with compensation. Remember, I gave an example of Gau train. Okay. So when Gau train was built, there was the expropriation, but the people that the expropriation was mostly for the extension of infrastructure, government infrastructure in the main. So that's where the expropriation is happening.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning. That is Makashule Kana, who is a Rise Mzansi Member of Parliament.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me read one or two messages that some of you are sending. So Debo says, and Debo, it's the same question I've been asking myself. Debo says, pardon my ignorance, how are we referring to 15-year-olds as unemployed youth? Aren't these children who are underage and still need to be at school and therefore unemployable? That's a question from Debo. And that's in reference to, how Stats South Africa frames the unemployment statistics and basically talks about, when they talk about youth unemployment, they will make reference to 15 to 24 or 15 to 35. I suppose, it would help if they clarified for us how they came about with that figure, that age band, and include 15 in it instead of saying, 18 to 24, which is what you would have expected, right? Yeah, it's a good question. I think we'll put it through to Stats SA and see if they can clarify it.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Easing up through the Buccleuch interchange, particularly if you're coming N1 south after that collision earlier this morning. The run through Midrand sort of looking a little bit more normal now. There's some queuing pressure between Old Joburg Road and New Road. There's still a big backlog on the N3 though, from Edenvale up into Buccleuch interchange territory. And if you're driving Pretoria, 2 crash scenes on 2 separate sections of the N14. The Krugersdorp Highway towards Pretoria has a crash at Brockfontein. That's heavy all the way back to the R55 exit. And coming out of Pretoria on the N14 Ben Schoeman, a crash before you get to that Snake Valley exit, the Vrede Road Bridge area. So very heavy leaving Pretoria as you squeeze into a single lane there. Durban's N3 inbound over those rumble strips remains heavy from the Paradise Valley split. It stayed with about a 45-minute queue up to about lunchtime yesterday. Outbound's pretty slow, and the M13 taking the sort of diversion pressure slowly between Westville and Sherwood. Both ways jammed there. Crash involving a truck on the M7 at Queensborough. That's pretty heavy if you're heading towards the Bluff area this morning. Cape Town, a collision on the M5, Prince George Drive. A vehicle overturning just by Dick Burton. So coming in from Grassy Park and Retreat, there's quite a backlog to work through there. And Tableview stays really heavily backed up. All the sort of exits, Gee Road, Wood Drive, West Coast Road, Marine Drive, Coburg Road, even as far afield as Plattekloof Road, coming across from the Corendell Circle side to get into Coburg Road. It really is a big mess because of the ongoing closure of Malabongwe with the protest at the noon. And just a heads up, as long as that road remains closed, as we saw yesterday, all day long, Plattekloof Road onto Coburg Road, up to sort of Potsdam Road is the workaround in and out of Killarney Gardens. That stays very heavy across the day. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
He's short, loud, and definitely not a licensed therapist, but he's asking the hard questions. It's Heart to Heart with Kevin, the only talk show where the guests spill the tea and Kevin spills the jokes. Real talk, real laughs, and real short host. Heart to Heart with Kevin, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on S3.
The city of Durban is once again ready to roll out the red carpet for thousands of delegates and influential buyers who are gathering from across the globe from the 12th to the 15th of May to attend the Africa's Travel Indaba. This premier travel exhibition stands as the continent's flagship event, showcasing the best that Africa has to offer in leisure travel. Visit Durban to explore and experience the city's unique offerings firsthand, from breathtaking hikes, thrilling indoor and outdoor adventures, vibrant culture, stunning natural landscapes, and world-class attractions. Join Durban Tourism at stand DEC 1G09 for your next holiday destination. For more details, visit durban.travel or follow at DBN Tourism on social media platforms. Hashtag Discover Durban. Hashtag Visit Durban. Hashtag Endless Fun Season. Hashtag Africa Travel Indaba. Hashtag ATI 2025. And hashtag Durban has more.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
One or two of your voice notes before I turn to the calls.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. The issue of why there's so much noise with the 49 Americans that just went to US is not because we have a problem with them going to US. It's because they're going to US via the lies that have been sent to US ears by the AfriForum and all of that white supremacy group. It should not be like we are afraid because they went to HLF. No, we are not. This is our country. We are native into this land. Voice from somewhere in South
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah, you called them Afrikaners, did you? Thank you for that. It says Amerikaners. Someone wants to weigh in on the conversation we had earlier on with Kim Heller regarding the issue of white privilege.
Hi, Tulas. I'm a high school teacher, and I do talk about white privilege in class because I think it's important. And the example that I always use is that my dad's dad, my grandfather, was the manager of a mines in Joburg, which meant that my dad could go on to become a lawyer and I could go on to get a good education. But what happened to the men who were working on the mines that my grandfather managed? And that's white privilege. That is systemic, year-on-year privilege.
Yeah. No, I like that. Thank you. Honest and hard conversations. These are not easy conversations. And even as Kim Heller was raising them, they never easy conversations. But we will only make progress if we are honest with ourselves, right? And this is not to detract from legitimate concerns about the current state that we find ourselves in South Africa. We should never shy away. Criticizing the government of the day cannot detract from the lived realities and experiences of the past and the extent to which those have shaped who we are today. Thank you for that. Let me take one more and then I'll turn over to the calls that have come through. And let me take this one.
Good morning, Tulas. This is Ntobeko Nomchwalum. Tulas, I think the media, mainstream media, is giving too much attention to these Afrikaners who moved there to the US, and I think it's way too unnecessary. They moved there based on a lie, and we are entertaining those lies. By giving them this attention, we are entertaining those lies, which shouldn't be the case. Let's just forget about them, let them go, and then we move on, because we know whatever they are saying is not true. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think my understanding of it is that it's not just about the 49 people that have left. It's about the broader issues that it reveals, the issues to do with the South Africa-US relationship and the extent to which the Trump administration, the lengths to which they are willing to go to really pursue whatever grievances they have, because even the media in the United States, by the way, are calling this out quite significantly. There's significant pushback, especially in the mainstream media in the United States, that's basically calling it out and saying that there is no genocide in South Africa, despite what President Trump has said. So I think it's about the broader issues internally here at home, what it reveals about our own relations and how we interact and grapple with our past and history, as well as where we are going together as a society, as well as that relationship with the United States as well. Those are the underlying issues that I think are more prominent than the 49. Temba in Protea, good morning. You want to talk about unemployment?
Yes, how are you?
Very well, how are you? Please go ahead.
Good. During my school days, I studied history. I've learned about Herzog, and then they gave information in details, talking about bread and butter, how Herzog created apartheid, and I used to hate white people for that history. But in the long run, I've changed my mind. The way our black leaders are behaving, they've made me to change my mind altogether. During apartheid, there was employment. During the democratic dispensation, there is high rate of unemployment. But when they say we are racist, how can you employ someone that you hate? They've employed black people during apartheid. But now our black leaders, they employ each other through comrade, through friendship, there's a lot of nepotism. Understand?
Yeah.
I'm talking about democratic dispensation.
Sure.
The high rate of unemployment has been created deliberately by our own black government. There was no nepotism during apartheid. They employed, there was a lot of employment during. So those who were born late 80s and 90s, they know nothing about it. They just talk And then they take lies from their parents who are saying, I'm a pulu, he checked me. They are lying, those parents, understand? They mustn't
I've heard you. Thank you for
they
that,
must
Temba.
stop lying, man.
There's a lot that Temba said there that we could engage and grapple with the realities of apartheid. The grievance, though, his grievance at the heart of it, if you take away some of the issues that we might take with his framing of what apartheid was really like, the grievance, I think, for me, is what we should be focusing on. And I think that's legitimate from the side of Temba. For today, because we don't have time, let's park everything else that he has said, the claims about the realities of apartheid, exploitation of labor, etc., etc. Let's leave that for now. Begin Mpumalanga. Good morning. You want to talk about Timothy Omotosho?
Sweet and short, Thulas, because time is not on our side. The Section 34 of the Migration Act stated very thin and clear, and irrespective of that, even the Criminal Procedure Act, no person must be detained more than 48 hours. I don't understand what is our systems doing in South Africa, but this gives people victory that they don't deserve, and I'm very disappointed. Maybe in short, to cut the matter short. Thank you very
Peggy,
much.
I share your shock. I mean, I was also shocked. You think people who do this on a daily basis know how to calculate the 48 hours, right?
And we've got MPA had to vet a particular docket when it's brought to them to say that is it judiciable, and to say that this matter must be in court within the perimeters of the prescription of the law. But I'm shocked.
All right, thank you for that. That's Peggy.
Thank you so much.
In Mpumalanga. Matthew in Cape Town, good morning to you. Very quickly, short and sharp for me, please.
Morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, on the interview on higher education this morning, that debate that the two gentlemen has had, I think we have a big decision to make in this country, whether we're going to go according to the market. We all know that a lot of people are not the same. Even though I do think there is a need for humanities, but if we do not emphasize on skills instead of education, because by developing any skill, you need education as well. But I just think the market and the world has changed now. And if we do not change and adapt to that change, I think we will not have capacity to fix the country where it really needs, and that's employment. I think everything goes hand in hand. So I think skills is one of the major factors, and FET colleges has got a major role to play in developing that skills very quickly.
All right, Matthew, thank you for that. That's Matthew there in Cape Town, and that's it really. Our full and final account to you by way of your morning brief for this morning. The Talking Point is up next, and Oliver Dixon is broadcasting from Africa's Travel Indaba in Durban, but that's coming up after the news.
In our top stories, 2 suspects in Liffman murder case denied bail, and Lesufi's administration slammed for rising unemployment figures. Good morning. 2 men accused of the murder of businessman and alleged underworld crime boss Mark Liffman will remain behind bars. Johannes Jacobs and Gert Bezuidenhout appeared in the Western Cape High Court yesterday and were denied bail. Liffman was gunned down in the parking lot of the Garden Route Mall in November last year. The accused had appealed the George Magistrates Court's earlier judgment to deny them bail. The trial of a man accused of arson in the fire at the Usindiso building in the Johannesburg CBD is expected to resume this morning in the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, Ekurhuleni. Stembiso Mhlalose faces 76 counts of murder. During the Gampepe Commission of Inquiry into the fire in 2023, he admitted to starting the blaze that killed mostly foreign nationals. However, he changed his tune in the trial. Sashin Naidu reports.
Mhlalose is expected to return to the dock this morning for the resumption of his trial. Yesterday, Mhlalose's father, Beki Kumalo, expressed disappointment in his son's confession to a magistrate. Mhlalose allegedly confessed to committing arson to the magistrate. However, during the High Court trial, he recanted his statement, saying that he was under the influence of drugs at the time of his confession. However, his confession was declared admissible and it was read into the record.
The DA has launched a scathing attack on Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi's administration, accusing it of failing to curb rising unemployment in the province. Gauteng's unemployment rate has increased to 34.7%, with 2.7 million residents now jobless. The DA's shadow MEC for Economic Development, Mike Moriarty, argues that the administration's economic strategies and Nasi Spani program have not delivered sustainable jobs. He says the provincial government should start with a practical approach to fighting crime to tackle unemployment.
If you want to deal with crime, you've got to have better management of the police, and you've got to have focused interventions that go after things like the kidnappings and the commercial crimes and fraud. And then with it, the syndicates that drive the violent crime that happens in our neighborhoods. The other area is infrastructure. The investors want to know that you've got a secure water supply that's going to continuously come without fail, and electricity at the same thing. And of course, then there's the problem of our roads and also the rail service. You've got to deal with those.
The Anton Lebowski Educational Trust says South Africa has an education system in which educators face burnout in under-resourced and unsafe conditions. The foundation has also highlighted overcrowded classrooms, inadequate early childhood development, and some teachers that are involved in crime. The foundation's Nadia Lebowski.
In some ways, we have so much catching up to do because of the fact that we've been so stuck in what I would say is still this incredible disparity between what children in our more affluent areas are getting and children, rural areas and our sort of more disparate areas. There's a huge gap there, and that's the one thing where we're falling incredibly far behind with getting our children to the point of just feeling competent in the things that they do.
And finally, United Nations Aid Chief Tom Fletcher has condemned Israel's plan for aid distribution in Gaza. He says it's a cynical sideshow and a deliberate distraction from continued violence and displacement. Israel has said it would not allow the entry of goods and supplies into Gaza until Palestinian militant group Hamas releases all remaining hostages. Fletcher has told the UN Security Council that no food, water, medicine or tents have entered Gaza for over 10 weeks. Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, has accused Israel of weaponizing aid.
This is engineered starvation. It is the most inhumane form of torture and killing. 2.1 million people are at risk of famine, with 500,000 faced with a catastrophic situation of hunger and starvation, illness and death.
Recapping the top story, 2 men accused of the murder of businessman and alleged underworld crime boss Mark Liffman will remain behind bars. Johannes Jacobs and Gert Bezuidenhout appeared in the Western Cape High Court yesterday and were denied bail. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Talking Point is coming to you live from the Africa Travel Indaba 2025.
Looking for an MBA that works wherever you do? Henley Business School Africa offers the only international MBA in South Africa, backed by a global network of over 100,000 alumni, leaders in 155 countries. Ranked #1 for alumni network potential, Henley gives you the connections, confidence, and capability to succeed locally and globally. This is your invitation to join a world of opportunity. Visit henleysa.ac.za.
You know, ever since I adopted positive energy-saving behaviors, the National Grid is thanking me. You should also adopt this lifestyle and your pocket will thank you too. Simply switch off non-essential appliances and lights when they're not in use. Reduce your geyser temperature to 60 degrees Celsius. Replace inefficient lights with LED lights. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to help sustain our energy grid and contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.4 FM in Durban. You are listening to Oliver Dixon on SAFM. The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
What the World Economic Forum has been advocating is they want to try and scale rather quickly skills development in developing countries. And they are really pushing the concept of micro-credentials. And they're saying exactly that. It's, again, sacred ground, but academic studies take a much longer time. For me, it makes sense to do micro-credentials because the world is changing really, really rapidly. So by the time you finish an academic trajectory, things might have changed. So they're saying micro-credentials, and they call it collecting a digital backpack. You do